Charles, remember, of course, back in the day, you grew up in New York, yeah?
I like to say I was raised here. It's not clear that I've grown up.
But of course you remember when they used to say, Wednesday is Sunday at Carvel.
Oh yeah, of course.
So here we are, Sunday with Charles on Wednesday.
The special Carvel edition.
That's right, it's Carvel edition. Now, I apologize that we missed the opening logo animation. There's a bug in the current version of the software that I've got to relaunch the cameras every time we go live. So I got to remember that for next time. I think it's really great that we're able to do these episodes twice a week because when it rains, it pours on the Clinton Foundation.
Yeah, well, I think you and I have been anticipating, the audience has been anticipating for some time that this would be a very significant week. And so far we have not been at all disappointed. There's so much going on.
There seems to be a small, something is going on. It's saying video playback interrupted. Let me make sure that we're live here. Sorry, Charles.
That's okay.
There's always something technical that needs to be looked after here. It says live on the phone, but we're having some kind of problem on the laptop. Okay, it does seem to be live, but there's something going on here that I'm not fully. Let me make sure we're. Well, we seem to be live on the phone. We're getting okay. There we go. It seems all good now. All right. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Rains it pours on the Clinton Foundation.
Indeed.
We were anticipating that.
We were, well, I think we were. I mean, we knew, for example, that Corinne Brown was going to be sentenced on Monday. And what we've been trying to do, we'll reveal to the crowd now, this is a very big set of scandals that people have been trying to cover up now for more than 20 years, or longer.
More than 30, yeah.
30 years, maybe even longer than that.
Back to Arkansas.
And it's one of these things where if you sat down with somebody and you said, all right, in an elevator speech, why don't you explain in 30 minutes what's going on, people's heads would be spinning. So you have to.
It's just not enough time.
So I think the approach you and I decided to take was to pick apart key elements of the scandal and pre-sell them, which we have done now over the last however many episodes we've done. And now what we're going to do is tie it together for people in real time. So we know, you and I know, because we've talked about this extensively, a lot more than we can tell the audience even in 2 or 3 hours. So what we're going to try to do today is connect the dots between Sunday and now Wednesday at 4 p.m. and help you understand what we believe is happening, why the pace of this is likely to accelerate, and why this could soon blow apart many people's plans for Christmas and New Year's. I mean, this is a lot of people who thought they were going to be down, let's say, in the Dominican Republic, Hillary and Bill and Chelsea, because I think you spent a lot of time down there in the past.
Is that true?
Oh, yeah, they've spent a lot of time down there. They made me thinking more intensively about places that say don't have extradition treaties, like Brazil and Canada, for them, Quebec that is, or Qatar or something like that. I think when you look at the record, as we've been saying all along, there is no question this is a fraud. This is not, it's not debatable. It's not a black or white question. It's a straight up fraud.
Fraud is almost not even enough. This is frauds.
And so actually, when I got into this back in March of 2015, and I quickly saw it as a fraud, what I was wondering about and what I was spending my time on with the various veteran investigators I do know around the world is how could such a set of frauds, happen for so long and not get prosecuted? And so that caused me to think early on that this has been known to the authorities. This is something in which the authorities are in fact complicit. And when we say the authorities, what do we mean? We have the political leadership of, let's say, all these security services and governments around the world. And then I draw a distinction between the political types and the line law enforcement, the line investigative people, who in the main are straight up honest people. And so there has been this contest, and I think what's happened from 2001 forward after September 11th, when Americans and others became inured to the idea that we would be constantly under threat from radical Islamists and other terrorists,
Right.
we began to cede away the notion that the citizenry was in fact in charge of the political sphere. We said, let the deep state handle this, and we'll just have some 6 packs of beer, and we'll have our, whatever, our steaks or hot dogs, sushi or whatever we want.
Couple movies.
Whatever, and so we went down that path, and in that environment, what has happened is that the security services have run amok. No one really knows what these people are doing online, offline, officially, unofficially. And it's reached a place where, excess goes to super abundant excess. And we're now in a place where a hard knocker, Donald Trump and his team of hard knockers, has had the courage to stand up and say, we're not going to take this anymore. And no one really expected them to win, actually. I did, and others, none of the pundits.
I was worried for a while, but it does seem like he's starting to gain the upper hand and control of this situation. The tide is turning, particularly against this corrupt Mueller investigation.
Right. So what we're going to do today is, this is a typical presentation. I hope it won't go to 3 hours, but it might go over an hour and a half. The idea here is in the first several slides, once we get through the boilerplate openings, is to give you the key takeaways that we think are important, you and I, Jason, think are important in the last several days. And then to go for the professional investigators who are thirsting for details, who really want to be persuaded that this is a fraud that can be attacked. We're going to show you some keys to unlock this, to make it crystal clear, abundantly clear, who to go after. Because there are a lot of people here who have got to be close, if they're not already cooperating, have got to be close to saying, you know what, the Clintons are history. Bonnie and Clyde, they're still dead. And this is now the 50th anniversary edition of Bonnie and Clyde. As it happens, it was 50 years ago when that film went out. These Bill and Hillary, Bonnie and Clydes, have been at it now for how many years? 40, almost 50
Certainly
years?
Since the 80s.
Yeah, or before even. So I think he was Attorney General in '78 when he.
Oh, well, yeah. Oh, in Arkansas, right. I mean, when was Iran-Contra? Was 1980, and he was over there in MENA.
Right. So, for a long, long time, these people have been getting away literally with murder.
Yeah.
And I think the tectonic plates shifted very suddenly, actually, on Monday, and we'll get into that. And now we're in a place where I believe Mueller has been discredited. If he doesn't already know it, he's walking wounded. I mean, he and his team, they're finished. I think the people in the House and the Senate who've been asking patiently the tough questions that deserve answers have been stiff-armed, have been getting, frankly, a load of bull crap out of the Obama administration, out of the Clinton team. They've had it, and they have the leverage, and we're going into a period now where a lot of people want to go on vacation, but where the law enforcement authorities have the upper hand, the law and order wing of the FBI. Forget the political Peter Strzok, or however you pronounce his name, those type of people, the Strzucks. Forget them. The law and order people.
3 strikes on that guy.
Yeah, you're out of here. The law and order people now will have the upper hand, I hope. And in this holiday period, a lot can get done. Even a lot this week can get done, as we'll show you shortly.
Charles, you brought up something very interesting about 9/11, and we're far enough away from 9/11 now that we're almost kind of in a different era. And you mentioned about the deep state and all this. I think that when we look back, we need to consider that Zbigniew Brzezinski wrote that book about the technocratic revolution. I forget the title of it, but really 2001 and 9/11 was the catalyst for all that to start, with PRISM and the NSA spying on everyone. And it's basically understood by everyone now that whatever you send out over your phone, your email, is not private. People can access it, hack it, being monitored in all kinds of ways. And we've heard so much about people within the FBI that want to do the right thing, but we really feel the momentum building now with people like Robin Gritz coming forward, whistleblowers like Michael McMahon. We've got Michael Dick, who's been sort of fighting with the FBI and who's going to be coming forward with more information. it's really interesting to see how, and as you said, Donald Trump and his supporters gaining control over this corrupt, sort of rotten inner core. I think that the drain was more clogged than Trump might have initially understood, but I think the draining of the swamp is starting.
I absolutely agree. So why don't we jump into the standard disclaimer slide, which is slide 2.
Yes.
Again, we do this, sorry you repeat watchers, we do this for new viewers who may not be familiar with the approach that we're taking. It's very important that you understand that what we share with you is our opinion. We're exercising our First Amendment right to share with you analysis and conclusions gleaned through the evaluation of publicly available data. And where possible, we always try to provide links. Some would say we provide too many links. But for those of you who have spare time, you can go and you can see and patrol to your heart's content what we've been looking at, what we deem to be important. We try to save you time, actually. While this presentation may take some time, I promise you I put a lot more time into this presentation than we're going to spend together today. So this disclaimer applies to everything that we say throughout this presentation, every fact, every piece of analysis. I like to be contacted either via my site, there's a way to do that, or you can follow me on Twitter. I know that Jason likes to be followed on CS The Truth. And again, hats off to the art department for the yet another triumph on the Bonnie and Clyde poster.
Always trying to keep it real. You know, the other thing I wanted to mention, Charles, that's really unique, and I got to compliment you on, is that it's the way the information is put together, and you mentioned having it geared towards investigators and things like that. This is such a complicated fraud and such a complicated subject matter that knowing where to begin is so difficult. You're laying the investigation out for people that can take action on your findings. I don't know that everybody understands that you're not at all involved in law enforcement or law or anything. You're just sort of like, hey, everybody, look
over
at this.
here. Well, and honestly, what I did find, it was interesting, in dealing with the various people I've been dealing with, the uniform thing that comes back from the pros who say that they're experienced dealing with the Justice Department or attorneys general is that the sad fact of life, unfortunately, is our government authorities, though they are expensive and though they are in theory husky and powerful, they're in theory, those of them who are concentrating on their job and not messing around with mistresses or boyfriends and watching porn, but the ones who are actually working are overworked. And so something like this, which doesn't fit neatly into one box, it's not an Arkansas fraud or a New York fraud or an American fraud or whatever, it's a global fraud with lots of different slings and arrows to it. Something like this is very difficult for a state government to follow, even for a federal government to follow. And so that's why I'm trying to do it the way I'm doing it, or we're trying to do it the way we're doing it. We lay this stuff out. If you don't like the fraud from this perspective, look at it from that perspective. It's, you know,
what do I got to do to get you into this fraud?
Yeah, right. Okay, exactly. Yeah. All right. So let's talk for a second, because we assumed I had done enough work reading about charity frauds and reading about what happens, what actually happens when you get tagged with a charity fraud. And I actually met with lawyers recently, and one of them pointed out to me that something I guessed but didn't know, that actually the law that applies to charity fraud is the strictest law. It's even stricter than law for-profit. And the for-profit land, the lawyers, I mean the drafters, the legislatures, they expect people to try to game the system in for-profit land. You're trying to make a profit. There's no such thing as too high a profit, in theory, unless you're monopolistic. But, you know, the funny business is expected in the for-profit area. In the not-for-profit area, it's forbidden. And so, you know, when you go into that zone, when you decide that you're really going to do good works, particularly in the United States of America, with our tradition, our legal tradition, you may not do the types of things that Corinne Brown did. Now, Corinne Brown is this representative. I'm not gonna harsh on her for her personal antics and her decision, which was very unwise, to treat the whole proceeding as a joke. And but what happened is with her is she during the same time that James Comey, the homie, decided that he would not go after with the Peter Strzok's help, would not go after Hillary over the email stuff in the middle of a looming general election where Hillary sought the highest office on the planet of the earth, forget about just in the United States. That same moment, the U.S. attorney, I think it's the U.S. attorney in Jacksonville, decided to go after this Corinne Brown, who had been in Congress for 24 years.
Wow.
And they went after Corinne Brown for what turns out to be an $800,000 charity fraud.
What was the charity she was involved in?
It was an educational charity. I forget the name of it. They all have great names. That's the standard thing. It's either for the children.
She looks good for 71.
For animals, it's whatever. You know, so they always have great names: orphans, animals, children, you name it, whales. But so it had a name like that, and she ultimately was convicted on 18 counts. And if we go back into the
yes,
yeah. If we can hit that sentencing thing, the first link.
this one.
Yeah. All right, now this is a must-read document. You investigators who are out there, you government officials who are considering state actions, federal actions in the United States, and foreigners who are thinking about this, our legal tradition is probably very similar to English or Canadian or Australian. It may be quite different in France, but the 50 attorneys general in the United States of America, the state ones, our actual attorney general, people in the FBI, you need to read this memo carefully. And the bottom line is that Corinne Brown was sentenced to 5 years in prison for an $800,000 declared fraud. Okay, the Clinton Foundation that we know about, where they've officially admitted to spending money, is about $2.3 billion or so.
Wow.
All right? So if you get 5 years in federal prison for $800,000,
How long
the
do you get
simple
for the
math
billion?
is, we'll get our crowdsourcers to tweet it out, you know, $2.3 billion, divide that by $800,000 and multiply that by 5.
It's going to be a big, big number.
I'm not sure the pyramids have lasted that long. I mean, it's a very long period of time. And that's and the verbiage in that memo is so brutally bad because the judge, I mean, the U.S. attorney goes through the history of charities and goes through the notion that people in public office have a higher responsibility than general members of the public. And so this chastises Corinne Brown, who was one of 435 members of the House of Representatives for 24 years. Hillary Clinton, on the other hand, had been the First Lady of the United States, had been a U.S. Senator, had been Secretary of State, was aspiring to be President of the United States. Okay, you just take that Corinne Brown memo, mark it up, and you know the big message I would have for the people who might be considering defending the Clintons at this point of view, you're not going to win. And you ought to be really concerned about how you're going to get paid, because the Clintons aren't going to have any money by the time you get through with this. Oh. Something wrong?
Your camera's frozen. I'm sorry, Charles. The thing I was going to bring up is that the other day we had Thomas Paine on, and he was saying that the fact that it went from like 300 years to 5 years indicates that Corinne Brown made some sort of a deal. Yeah, give me a second there. Something's going on with your camera. I'm not sure what. And he indicated that she must have made some kind of a deal. No, it's working. So I wonder what that holds in store for whoever she might have been making a deal with or about.
All right. Well, if we just go back to that slide, so the underlying slide,
yeah,
not the...
sorry, there's something
It's okay. There we go.
strange going on today.
It's all
Please
right.
continue.
Okay, so what has happened since Sunday is that it now becomes quite clear, and with each passing hour, frankly, it becomes clearer, that the resistance that was very much supportive of Hillary Clinton and anticipating that Hillary Clinton would be the president of the United States, that resistance had been put in place long before the primaries. That resistance had been burrowing in, some might argue, 1993, when Bill's first year and when he replaced all the sitting U.S. attorneys, and when he began to put people in to political positions, and when careerists joined under those political people, the resistance is deeply stuck in. The anti-Trump resistance is deeply stuck in. but it is now being exposed for what it was, what it is. And I remember, Jason, you and I brought up this issue of Andrew Weissman and Sidney Powell months ago at this point. And we made reference early on to Sidney Powell's book, I think. And now she's, people are listening carefully to her because she knows all about Mueller and all about, sadly, Christopher Wray, who was on the Enron task force.
Yeah.
So your key takeaways here, you start with, to go back one, you got to read the sentencing memo. This was the objective of the U.S. attorney, and think about everything that's said in there applies in spades to the Clintons. You got to, I don't know. There you go. This is a key document. I mean, I'm familiar with this area, so it took me about 20 minutes to read it, but if you're not familiar, it might take you 2 hours to read it, and it's worth reading. It's worth every second. The next takeaway is that we're going to find now, I think, like a fire hose, we're going to find out just exactly how dank and musty this resistance is, how many members of it there are, how moldy the hose is through which the water's been going, and how badly that swamp stinks. I mean, it's really, it's going to be tough to absorb the number of names, but I think it's a safe assumption. Anybody on the Mueller task force should be fired, every single person.
That's clear. I mean, I saw something today even talking about the, there's a task force investigating the task force.
Well, that was revealed early on, that what it is it's Inspector General of the Department of Justice has been investigating this, but if we can go back into the body of the slide.
Sure.
The issue here is we really need to have real investigative, Thomas Paine, other allies of ours around the world who are not tethered to the corporate globalist media elite have got to go back into this. There are too many slime buckets associated with this. A name popped into my head last night, Peter Kadzik, and his links with John Podesta, and his role also potentially in impeding the email investigation. All of the people in the corporate media, particularly that idiot Ben Rhodes and his brother, two idiots. One is head of CBS, I think. The other was couldn't get a security clearance in the transition after November 2008, according to the WikiLeaks, and was perhaps, it's tough to decide in the Obama administration who was farther out of their depth: Ben Rhodes, Susan Rice, Barack Obama himself, possibly Eric Holder. But I mean, we got to go back into this whole period. What was really going on? And it's not simply from the Memorandum of Understanding forward. We got to go back, I would argue, January of 2008. By the time the primaries actually started, I've got to believe that Team Obama had done opposition research on the Clintons. And I am certain that Team Clinton had done massive opposition research on the Obamas and knew all the weaknesses.
Well, Sidney Blumenthal had that whole picture of Obama in the African outfit, and they were the ones that came up with this notion of the birth certificate and all that.
But that was by July of 2008 that happened in New York. You're right. But I'm saying to see what's going on here in real context, we can't say, everything was pristine through January 20th, 2017. Let's not look at the past.
Yeah.
I mean, we got to go right back in to, I would argue, probably before Hillary began to raise money for for her re-election campaign in 2006. She had to win if she was going to run for president. She couldn't lose that, so they needed money. They needed more money.
Yeah.
And in 2006, since they've had this pressing need for money for political campaigns, for personal grandiosity or whatever it is, they just need the money. And so we have to understand that that need, that felt need, was driving their ambition. And so there's an old phrase, with money we will get men, and with men we will get money, that goes way back to Caesar and stuff. So real investigative journalists have to go back into that period, 2006. I've got to believe that Bill Clinton and the Democrats could taste Hillary Clinton, being the next president. Your mind has got to get out of the gutter. And so if we actually had real investigative journalists, people who had access to these servers, what would the email traffic really tell us? And how many people on the inside of that Clinton machine, that Clinton swamp, thinking, for example, let's pick one, Ira Magaziner. He thought he was going to be on top of the world. Mm-hmm. And, he's a man now who's almost 70 years old. He's very wealthy. He must know a lot. And he will be tagged when this goes down. He's centrally involved in the chai fraud, which is the biggest piece of the Clinton Foundation fraud. His the second biggest is also his. That's the Clinton Climate Initiative. And so he's certainly vulnerable. He certainly has assets. He should be singing like a canary.
Well, and he should be careful too, because being 70 and going to jail sounds terrible, because you're at that point in your life where you're like, oh, I can finally relax, retire,
free
enjoy
healthcare,
all my money, healthcare. And he's going to be playing tennis in an orange outfit.
Yeah, not even. I remember this. We talked about Corinne Brown. She's 71, facing 5 years in a federal penitentiary.
That's no fun.
Can sharpen the mind. So the third takeaway is we've got to get real investigative journalists to don't just settle with Peter Strzok. I mean, in the last 6 hours, I think 5 more names have come out. I don't remember them all. One of them is, I think, Janine Rhee, R-H-E-E is another one. Very suspicious. I think it's somebody Quarles. But there's a long list of names that are going to be popping out now.
They always have crazy names, Quarles.
It can never be right, John Smith. But there's a large number of people whose backgrounds need to be checked. Not the way we do it in the past, of just saying, all right, who's Jason Goodman? It's got to be, who's Jason Goodman? Is he married? The whole thing, parents, skeletons, deep dive, because my suspicion is that certainly under the Obama years, that the type of vetting that was supposed to be done was not done.
Well, that's specifically what Michael McMahon blew the whistle on, was that the vetting process was non-existent, and they were working on what he described as quantity rather than quality. But just from listening to what he described in the interview I did with him a few months ago, people should search for Michael McMahon in the Crowdsource the Truth video archives on YouTube. But it sounded like deliberately pushing through a lot of people like Imran Awan and all these people who would never make it if there was any vetting at all.
Right, and perhaps at some point in his career, Admiral Clapper, was a fine, distinguished gentleman. But I mean, he took idiot pills the last 10 years. I mean, some of the testimony that he has given of, the Muslim Brotherhood is a secular organization. I mean, come on. You say that kind of stuff under oath, and the eyes of the world are on you, and you're our top guy. I mean, the fish rots from the head, right? You're our top guy. Can you imagine the bottom 20% under whatever organization he was in? So if we go back to that slide, investigative journalists need to turn the heat up, and then we need to think a little bit about this 2016 primaries and the election. What happened, and it's funny, as I was walking over here, I may have missed something, but I believe I walked right by Jay Johnson on the way over here.
Oh, really?
It's possible. It was a spitting image of Jay Johnson.
Did he have a lot of Homeland Security?
He did not. He was by himself. It's like the day of the election, I know I'm digressing here, but the day of the election, I met a journalist right next to Trump Tower in the morning, and on the corner of 57th Street and 5th, which is, for those of you who don't know New York, a very busy intersection. Yeah. Election day, security everywhere. And here's John Boehner on the corner by himself. He bounced, no bodyguard, no nothing. I said, how you doing? And he was like pleased that somebody would recognize him. So I think that when you're in, you're in. When you're out, it's like, see ya.
Yeah.
But anyway, the real issue on this collusion thing, the spotlight has been pointed on that, that fleeing rabbit over there, Russian collusion. Oh, let's focus on the Russian collusion. Let's ignore the possibility that the deep state and the people who had the most to lose really wanted to make sure that Hillary Clinton happened, because they knew in Hillary Clinton they had a bankable person on whom they may have had, goods, as we see with this fraud. I mean, the deep state must know the degree to which the Clinton Foundation has been a central clearinghouse trading influence, for cash and vice versa. They must know this. So they wanted somebody who could manifestly be bought and would be kept under their thumb. And so my question is, when we go back over this, we should, and I've been saying since the very beginning, even before I met you on multiple venues, You want to investigate 2016 and 2015? By all means. Let's investigate the Republican side, and let's find out how Donald Trump, a rank novice when it comes to politics, managed to blow Jeb Bush out of the water, without even trying. And then having done that, sweep the field. Let's examine that, and let's ask ourselves, did Donald Trump, rig the primary system, or did he blow the establishment up who had tried to rig the primary system? So let's think about that. And then on the other side of the coin, with the Democrats, how much effort was actually put in place there to try to just deliver the election to Hillary? And was this part of a bargain that may have started as far back as, say, March 2008, June 2008?
Or well before that.
Or
and
even,
the bargain really strikes a chord with me, because how many people wanted Hillary to be elected because they were looking to cash in their favors?
Right, exactly. If you've got a bankable politician, it's a beautiful thing if you're a crook, especially if you're worried about a real Justice Department actually doing stuff.
Right.
So then, one point that we've tried to get into that we haven't really hit as hard as we need to is this issue of Rod Rosenstein. I am deeply troubled by what I see in Rod Rosenstein's pattern of connections here. The fact, it's a final point, the fact that he was centrally involved, taking too much time, in my judgment, this is a great story, by the way, but he was centrally involved, Rod Rosenstein, in taking too much time to figure out what really happened with the generic drug scandal.
Right.
He missed the Clinton-Bush Haiti scandal, as far as I can tell. I mean, here's Clinton. We've been through this several times, but just to refresh, are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm just trying to find that Rod Rosenstein link.
Oh, okay. So we've been through it several times, but on the Clinton-Bush Haiti thing, the largest grant from the Clinton Foundation, the parent Clinton Foundation, to anything, the largest single expense in 2010 was a $37.2 million grant, supposedly to the Clinton-Bush Haiti Fund. The problem with...
Justra?
No. The problem with that, Clinton-Bush, the problem with that one is that in the filings that are out there, the first initial filing that went in November 2011 for 2010, and then the one that went in 16 November 2015 for 2010 amended, both say that that $37.2 million went to the Clinton-Bush Haiti Fund at a post office box in Baltimore, Maryland, where there is no such fund. Okay, and those are false statements. Remember how what's his name? How quickly we forget Mr. Flynn got tagged for making false statements. These are false statements made under penalties of perjury on documents sent across state lines, obviously from either New York or Arkansas or both, into the IRS office in Ogden. Okay, 2011, then again in 2015, well within the statute of limitations, claiming that $37.2 million was sent into a post office box in Baltimore, Maryland. How did you miss this?
Who got that 37 mil?
Well, and why does it say 37.2 million in one place and different amounts, including non-cash donations, in other places? And there's actually an audit here that is, and why is the Clinton-Bush Haiti filing, why is that not on the Clinton website? I mean, you go on and on. So the first strike against Mr. Rosenstein is Ranbaxy, which is a big problem. The second is Clinton-Bush, but the third is Laureate. We've been over the Laureate scandal. We'll talk about it a little bit later. So that's three, not even considering the fact that he's the one who, accepted the incoming missile from Comey's friend, the lawyer at Columbia, remember, who provides the dossier and the reason why we ought to have an investigation. Rosenstein gets the missile, and he says, all right, I'll use this missile to blow up Trump. And I think we have to really understand a lot about Rosenstein. Where does he come from? Is he married? Are there potential conflicts of interest here? He's pitched as being somebody who served both for the Bush and the Obama administrations, but is he really an Obama loyalist? Well, and might his partner or his wife, God forbid, does he have a girlfriend? Or the way this crazy scandal works, we really need to get to the bottom. This man needs to be vetted, not by Elmer Fudd and Mr. Magoo, but by people who, we don't need to waterboard the guy, but we've got to understand what the heck is going on here, because this reeks.
Yeah.
It reeks. Now,
sorry, I don't want to tie this individual to Elmer Fudd or Mr. Magoo, but But does Jeff Sessions recusing himself and enabling Rosenstein to take over implicate Sessions in some way? Why did he do that?
Well, and so what is alarming to me, and we should call out your friend, and now I just spoke to him for the first time, Thomas Paine,
True pundit.
a true pundit who's really doing fantastic work. Apparently his site is under attack at the moment, but there seems to be something going on now with these sex allegations out in Hollywood and the pedophilia allegations in Hollywood, and now we learn that Mr. Strzok is hanging around with Ms. Page while each were married to other people, and now we have in the True Pundit, we have this allegations that sexual harassment's been rampant in the FBI, that the policies were changed first under Mueller for whatever it was, 11 years or so. This story here, which is really it's a long story, worth reading. So we've got hot and cold running sex harassment and craziness in the FBI. We have it in the Secret Service. We have it, who knows if we also have it in the military. We have it maybe in police departments. We have it certainly in Washington, D.C. with Al Franken having to possibly resign maybe tonight or tomorrow. And who knows what shoes are going to drop. We have it in Hollywood. We probably have it throughout the investigative journalist world. We certainly have it in banking and investing. And, we have one big, crazy riot, which is, it's bad. On many levels, it's bad. But what it really is an opportunity for fraudsters. If you can find a pathway in to tempt and catch a powerful person, then you have a friend for life, a useful friend for life who can either not get you to be investigated or get an enemy to be investigated. And so we could have this culture of corruption in Washington, D.C. that is so deep, and we could be at a moment now, as you say, the hose can be opened up, and we can really get to the bottom of what's really going on here. And suddenly, there are a lot of inexplicable decisions here that could be a lot more sensible if people are being blackmailed.
Well, and I was going to say, did you see the interview that I did in Las Vegas with the Las Vegas madam who told us the story about how the FBI and the CIA, she called them FBI and CIA pimps, knew full well that she was running an escort service in a state where that is not legal. But rather than arresting her, they told her, come work for us. We want you to compromise Bill Clinton. And when she refused to do that, that's when they pressed charges on her.
So this is a big, a large playing field, as it were, that needs to be looked at closely. We're at a moment where there's a lot of good information that's come out. The Clintons have made a fateful mistake. Their team has made a fateful mistake, thinking they could bamboozle the large number of government authorities that are watching this around the world, the large number of investigators who are not beholden to the Clintons anymore, who are not assuming that Hillary Clinton's going to be president, and in particular to the long-suffering law and order people who've had their asses handed to them by these political bastards.
And not only that, they've had their financial lives ruined. In the case of Michael Dick, he's lost his family life. They made up fake charges that they had published on the news saying that he was a rogue and that he was armed and dangerous. 2 hours later, they published a retraction and said, whoops, that was a mistake. But this had implications in his personal life that have caused him tremendous life-changing turmoil.
Yes, and the final thing here is on George Soros. Now, George Soros, in red there, is the money behind a lot of the mayhem. And I think people in Hungary would know and agree with me. I think people in Russia would know and agree with me. I think the people who know George Soros well and his antics around the world would understand that this is a person who has made a career of destabilizing world markets, Macedonia, elsewhere, destabilizing world markets, likely trading on the knowledge that he was doing that, because you could make, people forget that equities or insider trading with equities is illegal. Insider trading with indexes and with cryptocurrencies, but more importantly with debt instruments. If you know you're going to destabilize Greece, you get some dumb schmuck, Mark Mesvinsky, to go, oh, I'm all in, I need one-sided, I'll buy those Greek bonds, I've always liked Greece.
Wow.
And meanwhile, George Soros is putting the big short. Again, you can make a tremendous amount of money. And so the question I have for the authorities, I know you all need money, and I know an election is coming up in 2018, And so some of you are thinking, you know, how are we going to pay for these political campaigns? You're not thinking clearly. The correct way to think is George Soros just put $18 billion into a charity. Okay? His charity has certainly not reported factually its contributions to the Clinton Foundation. For example, in 2004, we've already given you last week or whenever it was the 2004 990 annual report for Chai. That has $1 million contribution from a Soros Foundation in New York. There's no record of that I see in the Soros files. Maybe I'm missing something, but there's no record of that. And somebody really training their eyes specifically on the Soros Foundations, specifically on their ties to the Clinton Foundations, and most importantly on their ties to Media Matters.
Yeah.
You could send Mr. Soros a very large tax bill. I'm thinking you put $18 billion in, you put $18 billion in, you take $18 billion out, you wire that direct to the Treasury, you pay down the debt, Mr. President. I mean, that's just one. Why is that man not under investigation right now? Soros.
Yeah.
Is it? I mean, he's not.
Isn't he wanted to? They want to put him in prison in Russia, don't they?
Yeah, it generally doesn't go all that well for the prisoner. All right. So just to remind, this is for the benefit of the people who did not see this slide last week. There are new viewers. We're going to rip to this one page. With this slide, anybody who understands math, anybody who understands numbers, should be able to see right away that from 2005 to 2016, the entire period of time that the Clinton Grifters Initiative operated, okay, not a single filing concerning the Clinton Grifter Initiative and the parent company foundation, not one of them was compliant with the law. And this activity was substantial. It was not just this little minor little thing over here that had nothing to do with the core op. It was a gigantic, this is the way, and I think we're going to learn from the Uranium One informant, and I don't know this, but I believe there are tens of thousands of documents. We're going to learn from those documents. It'll be a starting place where we can pull on strings and see how exactly did these contributions come together and these commitments to action, these 3,000 plus commitments to action. How did they all come together? What was really going on? How many of them materialized? How many of them were close to being lawful? Now, we actually do not have enough time, assuming that we both live for a long period of time. We don't have enough time to go through all 3,200 commitments to action and laugh uproariously about how stupid most of them are, because they're crazy, some of them. But we do have enough time today, without going too long, to go now page by page and just take you through year by year an evolution of some of the craziest.
Yeah,
year by year.
Even that'll take hours because there's a lot. And
yeah, well, I'm going to be quick. I'm going to be quick. I've said.
No, I don't want to rush you. It's
right.
staggering how. Right. I mean, every time you lay this stuff out, it's like one of these things would put somebody in jail for a long time, and there's literally dozens.
Right. So what I did here is I gave myself last week. I gave myself an hour to go into the commitments to action, the next page, and to take for each point. Each year, rather, to try to find the ones that were most outrageous. Now, we won't pull up every page, even more than one, possibly, of these links. But on the left-hand side, we follow the same format on every page. The left-hand side, when you see something in red, sorry, people who like red, red is bad. I'm anti-red. If you see red on a page, there's a problem. If the entire left side of the page is red, there are massive problems. The 60,000 foot takeaway on 2005, a key year. That's the first full year after Bill Clinton finished the library on November 18th, 2004. From November 18th, 2004, not one activity or action of the Clinton Foundation can be in compliance with law. If you defraud the National Archives on the November 18th, 2004, when you sign an agreement, typically not a great idea. You start a marriage out cheating on your wife. That doesn't tend to work that well if you're rich.
Getting up on the wrong foot.
Yeah, without a prenup. So there's no, I'm not even going to read every page here, but you can see, just looking at this at your leisure, you print this out. And investigators in particular, you people, if you look through the Corinne Brown sentencing memorandum, it makes reference to FBI forensic auditors and Department of Justice auditors and this and that. You get some serious people following the trails that we've laid out for you here on 2005. Pick up the ball from the preceding presentations, the fact that no tax form from 1997 through 2004, not one was lawful. Okay, and you can't build going forward 2005 on a swamp. You can't do that. If the past is all screwed up, the future will be screwed up. So what happened here is each year that these people went down a path, life got worse and worse. So in 2005, I focused on McKinsey, and I focused on this guy, Sant Chatwal, who I believe is the restaurateur who later had some problems. But in this time frame, Chelsea had spent a brief period of time working at McKinsey. Rajat Gupta had just left McKinsey in 2005. He was embarking on a new life of crime, which eventually got him tagged for insider trading in the United States of America. In January of 2001, the public record shows, and there's a link at the bottom, you don't have to pull it up, the public record shows, and this is in a civil matter, that this entity, MindSpirit LLC, sent money to Bill Clinton and then reimbursed expenses to Hillary and to Chelsea, 2002 to 2008. None of those payments are disclosed on any Clinton Foundation filing, and all of them should have been. And this entity that was used as a conduit was receiving its money from something called Info USA, a publicly traded company. And I think you might want to tell what they did.
Well, I just love how you describe it as like a mailing list of forgetful people.
I mean, it's just when you read about this thing, whether it's specialty, I hate these things where they, sign you up to pay whatever it is, $19.99 a month or whatever. They would sell mailing lists of people who are, on the path towards advanced Alzheimer's, and those would be valuable to these crooked solicitors, probably signing up for $19.99 a month.
And they forget about it.
And they forget about it. So what happened? They can't tell you because they forgot.
Now, McKinsey is just a consultancy, right?
Well, see, McKinsey is not just any old consultancy. There's a book written about McKinsey called The Firm by Duff McDonald. Right. And McKinsey, I would argue, is the glue for globalism. I mean, it is these they start out young consultants. They fly around the world. They have multiple clients. It's a very well-known firm. It's not regulated. I think it should be regulated. There are people who believe that McKinsey is basically used as a crossroads, a clearinghouse, to have people in the same industry share secrets without conspiring. You hire McKinsey, and they'll puke back to you a study that tells you what your industry is doing. You say, well, that's interesting.
There's all my competitors.
Exactly. They go from one competitor to another. And then they have a special department at McKinsey. They had one that helps governments around the world. Obama was going to use McKinsey consultants. Everyone uses McKinsey consultants. And Chelsea was working at McKinsey. But in this book, Duff McDonald relates the fact that Rajat Gupta liked to brag about he was doing the Clintons a favor by hiring the world's diarrhea expert as a
we get yelled at when I laugh.
That's all right. I got to keep it real. So the first meeting for this Clinton Global Initiative was held in September 2005. They never changed their articles of incorporation at the parent foundation to give them the right to hold something like this. They never took the requisite care to make sure that it was actually a charity. I mean, you can't have a very expensive party in Manhattan where you decide the guests, all of whom can do you a favor one way or another, and you charge them $20,000 each, and you close it off to the public, and then you concoct business deals around the world. That is not a charity. That's a business development exercise in the guise of charity. And that would never have passed the smell test of any serious person at the IRS. But fortunately, in 2005, who was in charge of the department?
Lois Lerner.
You got it.
Now, I want to ask you this, and I know I ask it every week. I don't mean to become annoying, but is this new IRS guy doing anything yet?
I would hope. Again, we don't know. I mean, there are rules, and you can look them up in the Internal Revenue Service manual for agents. It talks about
That's got to be a lightning read.
It really is. If you're ever tired, you want to go to sleep like that.
Yeah.
But no, they think this stuff through, and they take you through what you're supposed to do in an audit where you suspect fraud, and it's brutal.
Can I give you a little piece of information that's just come right now from
Sure.
the Hudson Group?
Yeah.
Because people are clamoring, they're asking me, where is Mr. Hudson? And I just want to let everybody know, just because he's not broadcasting doesn't mean he's out of touch. They're saying that he's got strong reason to believe that the Clinton Foundation has moved $2 billion to Qatar through J.P. Morgan.
Well, I'd like to know how he knows that.
Well, that's not generally the type of thing that he shares, but...
I mean, he can down offline. You can give him my email and we can talk.
Yes.
But it would not shock me. I mean, the amounts of money that are talked about, and we won't get into it on this page, we'll do it on the next page. The amounts of money that are talked about in some of these commitments to action are so astronomically high. You know, one guy will stay up and, I'm going to commit $5 billion. Five only? You know, so would it shock me that they would use a vehicle to route money out to Qatar? I'm told Qatar does not have extradition treaty with the United States. I have been in the Doha airport, and you know, I think I'd rather go to jail than hang out in Qatar. But anyway, why don't we jump to 2006?
How about jail in Qatar?
Yeah, that's probably where I'd end up if they
got you out of the airport.
Right. All right. So in 2006, we have what I would like to do here is let's hit that before we get to the link. 2006, obviously, Hillary needs money. She always needs money, but to run for re-election, New York is a very expensive state to buy media, to have statewide campaigns.
Conduct fraud in.
It's easy for that if you're a Democrat. And in that year, you know, a lot of talk. We talked about Justra. People have not really gotten deeply enough into the admitted fundraisers in Toronto, where in August of 2006, I think on the anniversary of Bill's 60th birthday, there was one or more fundraisers held up in Toronto, in Canada. And you know, what was that all about? Because I don't see a trace of that money going into the Clinton Foundation. And could that money have been raised in Canada to support Hillary's election campaign without properly disclosing any of that? That's the same year where Justra supposedly gave $31.6 million into the Clinton Foundation. There is a number, I think it's 31.6 or 2, whatever it is.
I don't know how you remember all these numbers.
but it's 31 and change. And that number does show up in the tax form in 2006, but it's not clear yet whether that was all from Justra, whether that was from one of his charities, multiple of his charities, and how, if it came from a Canadian charity or him personally, how under Canadian law did he take that tax deduction? Because it wasn't clear you could do that. So also in this year, Clinton Climate began, and again, the Clinton Climate Initiative is like, I don't know, it's two guys in a bar. I mean, there's no form, there's no corporate form, it was never organized properly. It was an initiative of the London mayor to
Boris?
Yeah, was it Boris, or I forget who it was, in 2006, whoever the mayor was. And you know, it's a great idea. I mean, in theory, you know, that you have cities are where lots of people live in cities. They tend to have to be heated and cooled. Therefore, they use a lot of electricity. They pump out a lot of CO2 just by breathing, living, and all that. Why don't we focus on reducing pollution in cities? You know, yeah, it really sounds good. You know, the grandfather appeal, you can get somebody to send you $19.95 a month for that. Until you think it through and say, well, what if the people who are selling stuff that cities need to buy anyway, you know, a generator over here is not too much different than a generator over here. And how do you get that winning hand? Well, maybe you go to one of these things and you wine and dine a mayor, you know, and you get the edge on that mayor and you get a no-bid contract, or you get a preference in a contract, or you convince a banker or an investor to do some crazy-ass deal. But the point is, that's business development. That is not, you know, it's not environmental good works. And in any case, by 2006, when this work did happen, and there's lots of press releases, they never at that point had gotten any changes in their articles of incorporation to do this lawfully. So it's all fake work. And if you really want, I'll give you like 2 links on this page we'll touch. The first is the Green Fund. Not that one.
Why is a no-bid contract ever legal for anything, Charles? For
the
government?
They always try, or they always try to make the argument that there are special circumstances which mean that the reason we're giving it a no-bid contract is that you're actually, is because we need to pay the college bills, man. No, our mistresses have expensive taste. No, there can be an argument for no bid contracts. I don't think those make sense myself.
No, of course not.
Particularly for. But let's look at this. In 2006, this is one of the commitments to action. Now, I love the stationery. You know, I love the Clinton Global Initiative. Nice, clean look. You know,
Well,
it makes it
kind
look
of like a new logo.
It's kind of like a mixture of the euro and I don't know. It makes it seem like really official. It's substantive.
Rainbows and stars and everything's great.
You know, the colors look pretty
It's
good
almost
to
like
me.
a halo of an angel.
Yeah, I'd make a commitment to action to that. I mean, so what did they agree to do? They committed to create a $1 billion green fund. Okay, what part of that is charitable?
Or binding.
Yeah, this is fantasy land. I mean, look at the people. The names are big. You got Ron Burkle.
It's going to support investments.
Yeah, it's like on the face of it, the people who committed this are Ron Burkle, who was had some issues with.
Sounds like a hedge fund, not a charity.
It is exactly. This is not. You get together in a closed setting in 2006 when Hillary's running for Senate, and when she's poised to maybe be president of the United States and come 2009, and you stand up and say, "I'm all for renewable energy," and you've got Ron Burkle, who is paying the Clintons at this point, paying Bill Clinton through UKIPA, his investment fund. Bill's helped him raise money for that. You've got Stephen Bing, who is actually paying the Clintons. That's not disclosed. I mean, it's on the Clinton tax forms. But Shangri-La, I think, is Stephen Bing's, one of his companies, I think was paying, I may have that right, wrong, the name, but I believe Bing interests were paying Bill Clinton, and that's on the tax form, for his personal, Bill and Hillary's personal tax forms, but it's certainly not in the Clinton Foundation that they're being paid by a significant donor. James Wolfenson had been chairman of the World Bank, and Vinod Khosla is a candidate for Ortel's first law. We're going to give him, we're going to let him ride on this presentation, but I will just tell you, those who want to do it for yourselves and have some fun, apply Ortel's first law to Vinod Khosla, and I'll give you a hint. It's in Mississippi. It's good reading. It's good reading. But so this is pitched. Here's an official thing from the Clinton Foundation.
And then what do they
bragging
want people to put in that money to get to $1 billion?
Well, they're bragging that they're going to put together and they're going to find investors to create $1 billion fund to invest in energy. That is not no part of that's charitable.
Yeah.
And the scale of this, $1 billion, this is one of the commitments to action, right? And one of them only in 2006. The total program service expenses for the whole foundation in 2006 are less than $100 million. So, to say that you're going to do this $1 billion fund, you just destroy your foundation.
Well, they're calling it a fund right on there.
I understand.
It's an investment.
I didn't write this. I mean, this is not
It's a mutual fund or a hedge fund.
It's a private equity fund.
Private equity.
Yeah. I mean, this isn't a charity. This is a fund development complex.
That's crazy.
So if we then go back into the text and hit the Michael Smith link on the left, that you had the arrow on it, yeah. Now, kudos, we don't today know where the great Michael Smith is. This is a fantastic individual who was originally hails from Sydney, Australia. He was a detective. We won't go through all of this, but people, when you have a chance, in 2006, there's extensive documentation that the Clinton Foundation was taking money from the government of Australia, in theory, to fight HIV/AIDS in Papua New Guinea, and making false representations upon deceptive filings. There was no Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS initiative in 2006. It had legally disappeared December 31st, 2005. That didn't stop these people from saying, you know what? I'm going to get on a plane and I'm going to go to Papua New Guinea. And you can be very sure that the people in the FBI and the SEC will not tear themselves away from their affairs and their porn to go to try to figure out where Papua New Guinea is, because that's really far away. Yeah. And they won't stop to think that Papua New Guinea on a list of corruption index is way up there.
Oh,
You got Arkansas, then you got Papua. I mean, it's way up there. And this is a long, in-depth story, revealing in detail, with lots of links that people can read at their leisure, especially you people investigating in the FBI, Department of Justice, IRS. You need to tear this apart and ask yourself, if they were this involved in February 2006, taking money, and then if we look at here, working with this woman with this implausible name that you couldn't make if we were doing a movie about this, and say, well, why don't we'll have somebody working in Singapore on this. What name do we want to use? And her name is Ruby Shang. And she's married, of course, to somebody who's a Clinton donor, very much involved as one of the world's premier investors in Vietnam. Okay? And he wasn't raised in Vietnam. So
this guy?
Yeah. Mr. Vietnam.
Mr. Vietnam. Now, when you say that we don't know where Michael Smith is, do we know what happened?
Yeah, he travels around Asia constantly.
I mean, is he like missing?
No, he's fine. He just travels all over. He's constantly traveling. And Australians tend to, those that I know,
walkabout.
It's so far away that, you and I would say, well, why don't we go to the Upper East Side to have a drink? And they say, well, why don't we go to Tokyo for lunch? I mean, it's the same thing. They're always traveling.
I don't go to the Upper East Side.
Yeah, all right, fine. Okay. Anyway, this is fun reading. If we go back into the main slide for 2006, there is no disclosure in 2006 on the Clinton Foundation filings that should have been amended long ago, or in New York State or in California, of any government grants of any kind. It says 0. Well, we know the Australians, who don't seem to care about the money that they shift towards this Clinton Foundation, they don't care. So this is a clear example of criminal inurement, okay? When you operate a charity to provide tangible economic benefits or tangible benefits to a donor like Stephen Bing, you or a trustee.
Trustee are the people working at the charities?
Well, a director / trustee, there's a distinction between a trustee and a director, but just think of it as a board of directors. Somebody who's tasked with overseeing the operations of a charity. The difference, when I say it's stricter, in corporate land, the directors can say, well, actually, we employed a chief executive officer and we gave them authority to run the business, and, you can hide behind certain things. Not so in a charity. In charity, the directors, or if they call themselves trustees, they hold ultimate responsibility for making sure that the charity carries out the tax-exempt purposes for which it was authorized, that it does not engage in illegal activities. It's their job, and they can't delegate that responsibility. So when someone in a position of significant authority, whether it be a director, a trustee, an executive, or a significant donor to the charity, derives a private benefit, that could be an edge, burnishing your reputation by saying that you're, this philanthropist, or an actual monetary payment that is more than insubstantial. That's been held to be $500 for everybody associated with the charity over its life.
So you can't get paid to work at a charity?
That's different. You see, you could get paid for providing arm's length you get arm's length compensation for providing real service. Well, you can't go and say, I've got an intern over here, who likes to model swimsuits up at my massage parlor and pool complex in Little Rock, and I like to pay her $165,000 a year. You can't do that. But if you have a fully qualified librarian and you need another librarian, and Little Rock's cheaper than New York, and in New York it would be $60,000, but in Little Rock it's $42,000, and you pay them $40,500. You can do that, provided that.
So if you pay someone too much for a charity,
that is also.
How do they determine what's too much?
That's what the board is supposed to do. You see, when you in not-for-profit land, it's not like you're trying to make as much money as possible. You're trying to husband or wife the resources that come into the charity.
Pay people as little as possible.
Well, yeah, you're not trying to screw them, but you're trying, maybe some people are, but...
They're busy screwing everybody with this.
What you have to be careful with the money. It's your job to be careful. It's not your job to be extravagant. You don't do, as it is alleged in one of these Ed Klein books, Bill was, I don't know, having fun in the putting green in the 6th floor or whatever it is, and it has his light bulb goes off in his head, a GE light bulb. Why don't I just let everybody in the foundation take their boyfriend or girlfriend out to dinner? You can't do that.
What if, for the purely hypothetical sake of argument, you wanted to bring someone in to help you with your charity that you were raising, I don't know, $250,000 for, and give that person in excess of $100,000 to pay student loans? Would that be?
You can't do that.
Okay.
And so most people, I had not until March of 2015 myself heard of the term inurement. And annulment is a crime. It's a serious crime. You cannot operate a charity, as Corinne Brown has found out. Okay, and the penalties for annulment
5 years in jail.
much worse than that. Okay,
Whoa.
whoa, it's restitution,
And back.
and if, as I think will happen eventually to the Clinton Foundation, if their authority to operate as a charity is retroactively revoked, then people will be damaged. And once they're damaged, once the donors who gave in good faith, they will then sue the Clintons. They will then sue Haim Saban, sue Adil Ibrahim, sue Chelsea Clinton, sue Eric Braverman, sue all the people.
Why Braverman?
He was the CEO.
Oh, wow.
They're going to sue everybody who is involved with this fake charity, and they're going to win. And they're also going to sue the accountants. And you can't sue lawyers that easily, but they're going to sue accountants, they're going to sue bankers, they're going to sue fundraisers, they're going to sue as many people as possible. And as in the case of Madoff, they're going to get a lot of money back, even if the Clintons don't have any money left.
Madoff.
Right.
How come you can't sue a lawyer? Or it's just like trying to fight
Who
a boxer?
handles lawsuits?
Yeah. They just won't sue each other.
I don't know the technicalities, but it's very difficult. The government can go after lawyers, and that does happen when it has happened. When law firms, you get John Grisham's The Firm is a real life sort of thing. When law firms start to basically be criminal enterprises, it is possible for the government to go in and say, we're going to throw the book at you, and you're going to go to prison, and you're never working this
again.
Yeah. So by 2006, the thing that you see clearly here, investigators, if you're still with us, this is not a one-off episodic thing. This isn't like, oh, I slipped, and fell. This is a consistent pattern and practice of illegally soliciting funds across state and national boundaries, using the telephone, using mail, possibly using, and you should check this, investigators, whether they fraudulently applied for discounted postage rates.
Oh, yeah.
Because we got some sense that that's in fact what they did do.
I remember you telling me about that.
Right? So, and also using digital media. You're not allowed to solicit while your forms are false and materially misleading. And as Corinne Brown found, and as other charities find when you do this, once people wake up, once you people who are trying to get your Christmas parties ready, your holiday parties ready in the various attorneys general states, once you get that out of the way, you might turn your attention to cutting the money off, because you can cut it off with a switch. You just flip a switch and say, you can't raise money in my state anymore. Why aren't you doing that, guys? Okay, so there's an escalating pattern in practice, and we'll take you into 2007 into absolute hilarity.
The hits keep coming, Charles.
They just keep getting better and better. Now, when I mentioned to you, 2007, Hillary does a gigantic belly flop.
You talking about September 11th or the election?
2007,
oh,
neither.
Right, sorry.
In 2007, the presidential campaign does not get off to a great start. And they're burning through money. This is a year in which, we've been through this before, but for you investigators, the record shows clearly that tens of millions of dollars, as we showed you, parent company level, disappear. They're not, the donors think they've sent it to the Clinton Foundation, but it doesn't arrive in the Clinton Foundation books as far as we can tell. And you people in the IRS, you know this. You have the list specifically year by year of every name that said they gave money to the Clinton Foundation. You have that information. You also, for the American donors, have the information of what they told you they sent. So you should be able to see what I see. And I imagine that our Department of Justice, our State Department, our IRS has relations with these foreign governments. So they're taking this to a new level. The team that, the crook, frankly, who was running Info USA, who was sending money to Rajat Gupta through Mindspirit LLC, was Vinod Gupta. And if we click on this Hillary Clinton School of Journalism.
Is that this?
Next one down. Here's another commitment.
And then remember, we tried to look for this on
Right.
Google Earth, and it does not exist. So this was 2007. It's taking them 10 years to construct this undoubtedly impeccable
Right. And in the land of fake everything, it's rather amazing that they couldn't put together a fake journalism school in India. But I mean, this is mind-numbing here. Here's Vinod Gupta. In 2007, he was not yet tagged with the problems that he got into later. So people didn't know that he'd been scamming money from a public company. You know, he had, I don't know, he's claiming that he had, I don't know, 30 different cars and umpty-ump jets and umpty-ump offices and umpty-ump country club. You know, it's just overcharging the company for expenses, putting friends on the payroll, relatives on the payroll, sweetheart, in a public company. You're not allowed to do this. And so, but
the very idea of the Hillary Clinton School of Journalism, it's like opening up the Stevie Wonder School of Photography. How could you possibly have that?
Well, why do you even need it? You have the New York Times, right? You have that in your pocket. Why do you need this? Right? You don't need it.
It's the fakest of the fake.
I mean, come on. If I were running the Clinton Foundation, and Eric Braverman's a lot smarter than I am. You know, he went a Summa graduate from Yale. I was not a Summa graduate.
He's very well spoken when he.
Right. And somebody can't say, hey, boss, I want to give you a list of our best commitments, you know, of action. You know, first of all, I'd say, what's a commitment to action? And then I'd say, get out of here. That's nothing. Right. But anyway, so Hillary
He's
Clinton,
a lawyer, too, isn't he?
Yeah, Yale Law School. He's not only a lawyer, he's an actual
law
professor. Professor. But he's a straight-up professor, unlike certain other people in University of Chicago. But and he's a real professor, or was.
Are you talking about the Podfather? No, he's Georgetown.
I'm talking about the big man.
Barack.
The Lord. Yeah. So this Hillary Clinton School of Journalism, I mean, come on. From the Vinod Gupta Charitable Foundation? Now, where's that?
The Vinod Gupta Theft
I
Foundation.
haven't bothered to look that one up, that priceless one up. I'm sure we can be very certain that that's going to be, you know, up and up. I bet you they use Price Waterhouse as their accountant. Anyway, if we go back to 2008, to the next one. I'm skipping over other gems for people to look at their, to look at, you know, at Digicel Foundation and others.
Digicel is interesting. That's O'Brien from Ireland, right?
It's Dennis O'Brien, yeah.
Now, I found out something interesting last week or earlier this week. Eric Braverman was in the IDF.
Really?
I didn't know that. I don't think anybody knew that. I asked Thomas Paine, and that's sort of a new revelation. I'm working to like double confirm that, but that's an interesting development if it's true.
Yeah, it's amazing. So here we have 2008. Now, this is funny. 2008 is a pivotal year, obviously. This is the year where Hillary Clinton really fell flat on her face. In January of 2008 were the first set of primaries. Her team, by all these secondary accounts, have been going around telling the Democratic community, listen, Hillary's going to be the next president of the United States. You know, you screw with us and you're going to be, you know, ask Vince Foster how that worked out for him. And, but January she got shellacked and by some accounts blew through $100 million in January alone for the campaign.
Wow, that's quite a month.
That's a bad month. And 2008, as we said in the past, was a year in which $140 million went from Unitaid, in theory, to the Clinton Foundation. $140 million vanished. I mean, we don't see signs of all that $140 million.
It's staggering.
And auditors don't seem to care about it. And we also know, if we just hit that Zero Hedge link on the left, this is that famous Kamiki Gibson memo.
Oh, yes.
That's linked in here, and you know it's a tough call. We should do a poll whether people think the Kamiki Gibson memo is worse than the Doug Band memo, or whether the Doug Band memo is worse than the Kamiki Gibson.
But Kamiki Gibson was doing an audit, so at least she was being honest about the fraud. Doug Band was sort of just like boasting about it, right?
Well, so lawyers don't do actually audits, and that's why there's a lot of bad language in these.
But it was an audit, wasn't it?
It was just an independent review. She was asked. She was asked. What I think happened is that somebody asked Kamiki Gibson to, and we don't know yet who that was, whether it was the Clintons, whether it was Bruce Lindsay. Somebody said, "Listen, we probably should understand what happened with our foundation." And they got this memo, which is available here at Zero Hedge. They procured it off of WikiLeaks. And no one has yet from the Clinton Foundation said, that's not real. you know, if I were running the Clinton Foundation and something like that came out that it wasn't real, I'd be
You'd
up there
want
saying,
people to know
I'd
right
say,
away.
look, that ain't real.
Yeah.
You know, and I'd make an issue of it. But nobody has yet, and we're now, this happened over a year ago that the memo went in the public domain, and it is a incredibly damning, supposedly confidential, nice job on that one, memo, which is in draft form. So we don't know whether it's the earliest draft or the final draft. I mean, there may have been a more damning memo, a less damning memo. It may never have been sent to Bruce Lindsay, but this is a horrible memo. And this basically, you follow investigators, you could use this memo as a roadmap to ask the kinds of questions that you would need to ask to do a proper investigation. But this memo, in a nutshell, says we are totally screwed.
Yeah. You know, it's funny, you may not even realize this, but today you are sort of outlining what could be essentially a series of books. You got what actually happened, what will happen, what I think happened.
What I wish had happened.
Yeah. So we've reviewed this memo.
Yeah, we've been in depth. And if you hit the attachment link there for a second.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for. There we go.
And you can see this is November 10th. So this is 6 days after the election. And it's not a pretty picture. Not a pretty picture at all. And even if this memo is not something that can be used explicitly in a criminal court proceeding, it certainly is information that's useful.
It's a nail biter.
Yeah, it's really, it's something else. And here's a memo that went, in theory, to Bruce Lindsay on the 10th of November 2008, just before Valerie Jarrett started negotiating with Bruce Lindsay about how to cover off relations between the Clinton Foundation and Hillary when she's going to be Secretary of State. This memo shows, you know, either this memo was hidden from Valerie Jarrett, and if it was, you know, then I think I would be extremely cheesed off for the Clintons. Or, you know, Valerie Jarrett knew about this all along, and the whole thing was a wind-up. That, you know, that the Clintons had something on the Obamas had something on the Clintons. Both people did not want McCain to win. And they said, you know what, it's a marriage of convenience. We're not going to tell Valerie all this problem. But this is basically saying, the quick and dirty version is, our charity is a disaster.
Yeah.
Okay, and this doesn't even get into some of the internationalists. It's just on a domestic review, we're screwed.
But they say it in legalese, like, you know, instead of saying it's a fundamental fraudulent disaster, they say it has operational challenges.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you got that marketing flair down. That's good.
No, they said that. She actually said that.
All right.
It's grown impressively, but it's got fundamental organizational challenges.
That sounds good. That's good.
She's got a future. Better than you are going to jail.
All right. So if we go back in, then we can look at this. All right. We have. Let's look. Let's hit the PepsiCo commitment, the first one.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that because what is PepsiCo doing?
You'll see. It sounds pretty impressive. Now, they're going to drive
making soda.
They're going to drive sustainable water practices. That sounds pretty good. Driving.
You know, the other thing that the Hudson Group has been telling me about for quite a while is turmoil that's developing in South America, like Venezuela and Panama, and that the Bushes have quietly for many years been buying up aquifers, and that just like everybody goes crazy over oil now,
right,
the next wave is water.
Right. Well, so the whole thing, there's a whole debate, and you know, around little kids, there are tricks that you can use. I think I may have used. I can't share. Oh, they're totally legal. But, well, I suppose I can share. What I used to do with my kids at the beginning of each summer is, you know, they get out of school, and I would take them, we'd go to the supermarket, and I'd say, all right, you can have as much, and I don't even care what it is, as much soda as you can fit into our SUV for the summer.
What?
Yeah. And we would buy, like, you know, 20 cases of soda.
Holy
and
cow.
put it in there, right?
Why?
And, well, it's a very time-honored trick. So, you know, and then they gorge on soda for like a day, maybe a week, and then they got sick of it, and they wouldn't drink it. So I would just give it away to friends or whatever. If you give them more than they should have, you know, some kids will just reject it, and they ended up liking just water, But what happened here, there was, and I think validly, a concern in schools that schools in the United States were allowing kids to have too much crappy sugary drinks. And so in 2005, the Clinton Foundation set up something called the Alliance for a Healthier Generation, which I believe, when we look into it, we're not going to do it today, actually was a way for people to use the cover of charity to sell their products into school systems, right? And this here sounds great. They're going to work with, across rural Africa to get, grants to this Water Partners company, but they haven't really checked carefully. I know PepsiCo. I did a deal for PepsiCo in the 80s. They're careful people if they want to be. And what they didn't check here is you can't make a commitment to the Clinton Global Initiative as a corporation, a publicly traded corporation, if the Clinton Global Initiative doesn't exist. I mean, that's something you actually can't do. And so they did it.
How can you do it if they can't
Well,
do
because
it?
for Pepsi, it's such a big company, even if they gave $100 million, it would be a small rounding error. So if they have a problem, remember I said corporations can do things nonprofits can't do. It's an immaterial problem, and they just sweep it under the rug. But this is a problem. Okay, in September 25th, 2008, the Clinton Foundation was fundamentally, I would argue, operationally bankrupt. I mean, its biggest piece had its authority to operate revoked on March 31st, 2008. That HIV/AIDS fighting thing. They had been engaged now for years in this fake charity work for Clinton Global Initiative. No part of this was charitable.
It also, I mean, you've said this in so many ways, so many times, but this is a good example, without even knowing anything about it, this is a very good example of why this type of charity needs so much oversight. Because what would stop Pepsi from saying, hey, partnership for a healthier whatever, and then healthier than Pepsi could be Diet Pepsi, and that's not so healthy.
Right,
So
exactly.
what does that even mean? And they're just, putting a vending machine with other crappy products in it.
Right. So, and then if we go back in there, there's one other one. Okay, if we look into this gentleman who's mentioned in the, if we go,
Scotsman?
let's just see, yeah, Scotsman. There's some problem with the headline, but basically this is a gentleman who was supposed to give £8 million to the University of St. Andrews, this Vinod Sekhar, who is featured in the Clinton Foundation summary as being somebody who would be very much involved creating Clinton global initiatives in Asia. This is not the first person that I would pick to be my partner if I were a presidential foundation. I'm not certain that I'd want to be working with somebody who's due
in court next month.
And who may or may not have ever funded this commitment. Okay?
Under the Malaysian Bankruptcy Act. He obviously knows banking in Asia.
Yeah. He's declared bankrupt for debts totaling $2.4 million in June 2005, 2.5 years before he pledged $8 million to St. Andrews University. I mean, whoever's doing the vetting of the Clinton Global Initiative does not seem to be vetting too carefully.
I think that a lot of people, when they hear you or I say that it's a slush fund for grifters, they just think we're being like, I don't know,
direct,
anti-Clinton, alt-right, something like that. But right, it's so amazing how the depth and the breadth of the...
Right. Ortel's first law. I mean, mind you, all these examples, and I'm not bragging, I'm just relating fact. All the examples that you see here, I found in under an hour. Okay, imagine if I just restricted myself. I'll take 1 hour and try to find examples. It took me longer than that to type all this stuff and organize it, but just finding the examples took an hour. Imagine what the FBI, line people, non-distracted, great people, the line people, what they could do.
Way more resources than you have to do this.
They should take every single one of these commitments to action and look at them. Every single one, all 3,200. We go back into the main page. And then we look at, that one. This sounds good, right?
Petra Initiative
The
for
same
Poverty
guy.
Eradication.
You got to have an acronym, right? You got to have an acronym. It's all you got. And that initiative, doesn't that sound right?
They're smoking the pipe.
Right, exactly. The crack pipe. I mean,
was all these guys named Vinod involved?
It's a very common Indian name originally, but this is the same guy. Okay, this is
Oh.
the thing that went bankrupt.
The Took. I didn't notice.
That's
that.
in Malaysia. That's a title. It's like Sir.
Got it.
Right, but it always sounds good, right? He's chief executive of the Petra Trust. He's going to create, and they use this word sustainable. You know,
Yeah.
that sounds great. Sustainable. I want to make a sustainable fortune. You know, he's going to establish, who knows what, I don't even know how to pronounce it, Jatrafa Kirkus powered biodiesel plant. I mean, how is setting up a biodiesel plant in the West Indies, in St. Vincent, in Guyana, how is that charitable?
Well, if they're making electricity for people who are broke, that could be.
But in giving it away for free, yes. But if you're making money off of it,
Yeah.
so you can't use a charity to
Yeah.
gain a personal advantage. Burnish you've got a guy who's bankrupt. He's going to pays $20,000. You know, he gets to go to a meeting in New York, hang around with all these world leaders, and create pipe. And the world leaders are saying, yeah, the guy's got a Malaysian accent. He must be rich. I got no clue what this guy's saying. We'll give him $1 million for pipe. Why not? It's sustainable. You know,
It's sustainable, right?
Is it right? It's beautiful.
Well, I mean, poverty eradicate. If they actually called it the money laundering escalation fund, people would be like, oh, I'm not going to touch that. But poverty eradication, they don't tell you who they're eradicating poverty for. It's the
for
Bill,
the Clintons.
Hillary, and Chelsea Poverty Eradication Foundation.
Tax-free poverty eradication fund.
Yeah.
So then, all right, why don't we whip into 2009? Right now, by 2009, this is really when we're completing the 2008 tax forms, which are hopelessly wrong, right? They're just completely wrong, never been audited, not disclosing the dire state of affairs of the actual Clinton Foundation, the fact that its core operation had been shut down, not disclosing the fact that they filed a wholly false and materially misleading application with their own IRS, while Hillary is now Secretary of State.
Well, that's just it. It's their own IRS.
Right, but
Do you have your own IRS?
Not that I know
Because I
of.
could use one of my own.
and they don't disclose that the French government had gotten wind of this fraud, and by December of 2009 was indeed investigating it. Unitate's donations to this big thing. None of this stuff's disclosed. And for fun, let's look at the American India Foundation results. Second thing. Okay, this is when I search on, American India. This is again, the stationery looks great. Looks professional. I just search in here on American India Foundation, and below, on the page, you see there are 7 commitments to action. All right, and let's take combating AIDS in India. If you hit read more, yeah.
It's like all this fancy junk and then 2 sentences.
Well, notice who it's by.
Asha,
No, the other one. Do you know who Raj Ratnam is?
no, but I like
He's
his
still in
name.
prison.
Is he?
Yeah, he was the head of Galleon hedge funds. He went to prison shortly after this. I'm not sure when this commitment was made, but Raj Ratnam is serving time in prison for insider trading, and I'm not sure they've found the full contours of his frauds. But here's a guy who was involved with Bill Clinton and the American India Foundation, which started in 2001. Bill has never disclosed in either the American India Foundation all the problems he has with his Clinton charities, or in the Clinton charities all the problems that the American India Foundation has. Mm-hmm. But here is Raj Ratnam making a commitment to fight HIV/AIDS in India, which has nothing to do with the American India Foundation's charter. American India Foundation, for good measure, we've put this up before, Ortel's first law in the American India Foundation, we'd be here for 9 lifetimes, going through that one. I mean, it's just...
We'd have to break for dinner.
We'd have to break for dinner and, whatever, 4th meal and everything. But so, I mean, this is just a fraud from start to finish. American India Foundation has never put its books together properly. Its audits are fraudulent, in quotes, just like the Clinton Foundation in the early years. Raj Gupta was centrally involved with this. Vinod Gupta was centrally involved with this. There are many people who are highly questionable people. And, this is but one example of something that is, manifestly rotten.
It's just everything in here is so amazing. I mean, I feel like, you know what I think would be a much more succinct way to approach this?
What?
Why not do a 30-minute show about what aspects of it were not illegal, and then we'd be done with the whole thing?
Because we could actually do that part of it in a second.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll do that at the end of the show. We won't take too much more time. We're going to go faster.
I'm not trying to rush you. I'm just making the joke there.
Yeah.
There's just nothing about it that's, I mean, it really, you say that it's like, this is a mistake or something about it is wrong. It's so obviously just made up. It's just...
Well, now in 2009, we're going to hear from this confidential informant shortly.
When is that?
At any moment. I think they may already be talking. I mean, scuttlebutt, they're talking to the investigators already. 2009 is when this confidential informant is 2 years into cooperating with the FBI and in sending money to the Clinton Foundation. And and Rod Rosenstein's centrally involved in that. If you click on the right-hand lowest one, the Blackburn one, yeah. Marsha Blackburn is a wonderful human being, running for Senate, I believe, in Tennessee now. She and her staff put this report together last year. If you haven't read it, it's very lengthy, but it goes in great depth through many of the problems with this Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS initiative, with Ranbaxy. And the question is, Rod Rosenstein is either a champion actor and pretending to be stupid, or he is one of the stupidest men on the planet. I mean, how could you miss Laureate, are you paid to miss frauds? Is that what your job was? That's how you rocketed up to the top. Is that why Obama kept you on? Because you had a demonstrated track record for missing frauds. You missed Laureate, you missed Clinton Bush, you missed Ranbaxy, you missed the Clinton Foundation,
Well, but that's what I mean. He can't be missing them. He's obviously deliberately...
Well, we need to know. And none of this deference, so we need to remember who works for whom. You're not a public servant above reproach when you get involved with this many messes. Okay, there needs to be, American people demand to see explanations for what happened.
Yep.
All right, so we go back into the next page. Now we're into 2010, and this is fun. There's a guy who is rumored to be the savior of the Democrat Party.
Oh, yeah.
It's not you, it's not me, it's one Terrence McAuliffe.
Oh,
Okay?
no. The governor of Virginia?
He's just leaving.
No, he's a criminal.
Well, we're going to show you that. So here, in one of the things that was featured in 2010, if we look at the purported contribution, the second link. This sounds good. Creating jobs in the green affordable vehicle field.
Do you have anything in red? I don't really care for green.
That's right. All right, this is Green Tech Automotive. This became a Terry McAuliffe project. Okay? I'm not sure what his exact involvement was in 2010 when he was on the board of the Clinton Foundation. Okay? If we go back into... And all this stuff sounds great. I mean, they know how to turn. They could make vomit sound great. But anyway,
it would be the Green Projectile Liquid Foundation.
Anyway, so if we look at this recent story, what's happening? This is in Politico. This is not in Fox. This is not in Washington Times or Breitbart. This is a Politico story. They're suing McAuliffe and Hillary's brother about green tech. This is one of the commitments to action, green tech. The Chinese love it so much, they're suing. And this guy, McAuliffe, seriously thinks he could be the President of the United States in 2020.
Oh. I don't know.
Nice picture, too.
Yeah, he's looking kind of...
He needs that rosacea stuff. Right?
He looks like a hit in the face with a bag of nickels.
Right.
Now, this is quite probably unrelated, but when I was in Vegas at the Bundy trial, they were talking about how, what's the senator out there who's so crooked?
Harry Reid.
Harry Reid had some sort of deal going on with Chinese investors to use the Bundy's land to create a solar farm, and if you had green vehicles, maybe that's electric and the solar, and they get some kind of...
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. I mean, the people... If we just harp on this for a second, I come out, I think you come out of the private sector where there's no such thing as a bad investment idea. I mean, nobody ever comes to you and says, "Hey, Jason, I got this idea. Give me $1 million because I'm going to lose your money promptly."
Right.
Everybody thinks the ideas are going to be fantastic.
Right.
And the key to deciding whether it's going to work or not, beyond figuring out if you think the person is bankable and trustworthy, whatever, is stress testing the idea. Does that seem to happen in Washington, D.C.? No.
Well, it's all these no-bid contracts.
Yeah, you
and
just put
sweetheart
sustainable
deals.
and green
Yeah.
and, poverty eradication. You give it a nice acronym, nice
How
stationery.
What could possibly go wrong?
You get $10 billion. So, I mean, the intersection of the public sector with the private sector has gone to a zone where the public sector and people who are not fit to actually make money the real way that it's made money have developed too much influence in our economy. People like Terry McAuliffe should have nothing to do with government and stay focused on private sector only investments which are not subsidized by public sector grants and loans and stuff like that. So this is, again, I didn't have to try all that hard to find this, but this is an example. If we go back to the slide. In 2010. Now, mind you, 2010 is the second year under the Obama administration where the Clinton Foundation, I would argue, in league with the Obama administration at this point, is committing fraud of the first order. I mean, reorganizing much the way Enron was constantly, playing a shell game with all their subsidiaries. That's in essence what they were doing with the Clinton Foundation. Lie after lie after lie.
It's beyond the first order. It's almost like a prototype for a new wave of fraud that has never, ever, anything like it been seen before. And I almost feel like we can see the building blocks of it coming from the Bush dynasty, sort of, we've heard Bill Clinton say that Bush is like his uncle or something, honorary, So it's like they bring him in. And then I'm also, as you're talking, getting inklings that Obama was the next in line for this same kind of thing. And maybe that's the only reason he was allowed to become president, because you got to be complicit with this whole mess to get in there, which is why Jeb looked at Donald Trump and was like, "You'll never be president."
Well, speaking of that, in 2010, Jeb was very much involved with this Innovita Homes in 2009 and 10, which we don't discuss here, but Innovita, if you look it up, I mean, this was a brilliant idea. To affordable housing, bring it to Haiti, devastated by the earthquake and all that. Only problem with this particular guy running it is that if he had a business plan, he fooled a lot of people, Wesley Clark, Jeb Bush, all sorts of people. And it was such a great idea that the Obama administration decided, yeah, there you have him, Claudio Osorio. And Jeb Bush was briefly a director for this thing.
Really?
Yep. Wesley Clark was involved.
Oh,
the Clintons were pushing it. He knew how to sling the crap in a presentation, and he knew how to grease the skids. And he was smart enough to get out of Venezuela. But he's currently still in prison. Anyway, we go back into the slide, wherever that may be. There we go. And I suppose we could go into 2011.
All right.
Now, I know I'm sort of beating this dead horse hard, but the point here is that this is consistent pattern and practice. Mm-hmm. This is, instead of having immunity agreements that are struck where nobody gives anything up, and you get an immunity agreement, and you get a friendly interviewer, Mr. Strzok, that is tearing himself away from his wife and his mistress to spend time with you.
No, he's probably texting during the meeting.
He's probably doing that too, exactly, yeah. You have some real investigators say, all right, look, this is the way it's going to work, Hillary. You know how to fly on planes. You like to fly on planes. You spend a lot of time up in the air. Okay, you're going to spend a lot of time with us because we're going to go over all 3,200 commitments to action in the Clinton Global Initiative, each one of them. And we're going to go through, we've had a team looking at your schedule, and we are going to ask you what you knew about each one of these things. And every time you lie to us, you can tack another year on, another 3 years, whatever the penalty is. You better not lie. It's going to take us a while, and we're not serving Chardonnay, and we're not serving fancy canapes, and we're probably going to make you have Michelle Obama's lunches or something. I mean, it's not water torture, it's not waterboarding. You take her through this, and in 2011, if we click on what Citigroup did.
Don't like Citigroup at all.
So, yeah, that one, second, yeah. Again, energy efficient finance at scale. I mean, who writes this stuff? I mean, they must be smoking dope during working on it. Energy efficient finance at scale. What does that mean?
What kind of energy does finance use?
Oh, look at this thing. I mean, Citi committed to work together with clients, government, and NGO partners to develop and offer a suite of energy efficiency finance solutions and models that help to overcome persistent barriers to capital, ultimately working to advance and scale the market. That's not even written in English.
But what does it mean? I mean, what's the...
It's a way of describing a business solution that Citigroup may have come up with to develop business. I mean, this is not charity. And, you know, Citigroup, if we go back into the main slide, Citigroup nearly tanked the global market in 2008, had a gigantic rescue, which you see in the third link there. This just alludes to it. It's very lengthy. But in the second paragraph, it says, considerable and substantive work has been completed since 2008. And there's a long thing in here about how much government support. And we're talking hundreds of billions of dollars of American taxpayer support went in to keep Citibank from tanking the global market. And now they're repaying us by making a commitment to the Clinton Global Grifters Initiative.
Yeah.
Okay, and if you X this baby out and go back to the slide.
Incredibly rude if you go in there as well.
Huh?
Citibank, terrible.
Yeah. And then we get to meet another Rhodes Scholar. If we click on that thing, the acting chief executive officer of the Clinton Foundation is who? Oh, see here, you get a chance. Look, this is important. I'm glad we did this. Automatically now, because you attorneys general are not doing your work, the Clinton Foundation automatically solicits every time you hit the site, right? This is automatic. We're doing it as we speak in the middle of this presentation because you attorneys general, Eric Schneiderman, Xavier Becerra, we have links to all 50, almost 50 of you at the very end of this presentation. So the people in Crowdsource the Truth will be contacting you to ask why you aren't doing your job. We interrupt this program now to implore you not to contribute, but we look here, Kevin Thurm is the acting chief executive officer of the Clinton Foundation. What happened in, if we look at the very bottom, where did Kevin Thurm, he got a bachelor's, master's from Oxford University. What was he? Was he a rogue scholar?
What's up with Oxford University,
Well,
Charles?
it's the rogue scholar.
I mean, they blocked me and Trish from speaking with IDF Eric. I wonder what's going on there.
Well, Oxford is, it's an icon, so to speak. I use that word advisedly after Pelosi described John Conyers as an icon of the House and then said, get out of here. But
an icon of sexual harassment.
The devil. But no, Oxford University is a fine place. I have several ancestors who went there long ago, and I love it. I've been there many times. It's a beautiful place, but it's a globalist.
Globalists.
It's a globalist
deep state
hothouse. Yeah. But anyway, so here's Mr. Thurm who spent time at Citigroup. Now, there are a lot of people at Citigroup. It's a big place. Clearly, he should have been in a position. He's a smart guy. He should be in a position to understand the law. He went to Harvard Law School, graduated in '89, 2 years before Obama. He's somebody who should be able to figure out charity law. It's not that complicated. He's the acting chief executive officer. He can't say, that doesn't mean that he's pretending to be the chief executive officer. He is the actual chief executive officer. And he just affixed or caused people to affix their signatures to false and materially misleading, fraudulent federal tax forms. And
this guy's the chief executive officer of Citigroup?
No, of the Clinton Foundation.
Oh, so he took over for Braverman.
No, he took over from Braverman left, but then it was Maura Pally, then it was Donna Shalala. And by the way, a risk factor for fraud is when you have a lot of management turnover at the top. Generally not a good sign to say, well, Who's the chief executive of the Clinton Foundation? I don't know.
Yeah, let me check the
Let
calendar.
me check. At what time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because you're saying that anyone with even a small modicum of integrity would be like, hey, wait a minute, you got me on the hook here, I gotta go. Because if he's the chief executive of a charity and the charity is found to be fraudulent, the guy's in trouble, right?
Corinne Brown.
She was the chief executive.
Well, I mean, there's people who are listed and say, yeah, you go to jail. I mean,
so
this
that's
is a
why
man
Braverman ducked out.
as a guest. I mean, Braverman as a guest found himself in a position where he bought the BS. He sounded, you know, he knew Chelsea. He's one of Chelsea's friends. And I imagine the story was, look, you know, my mom and dad are not going to live forever. This is a great thing. There's so much we could do to change the world. I need somebody I could rely on. You know, Eric, would you ever think about leaving McKinsey or wherever he was to be the CEO? You know, you could do this for 20 years. You could make this your life's work, and I love you, and you love me, and it's going to be great. And, you know, you can do whatever you want on the side. And Eric probably bought the BS, and then he got it and took the job seriously, and then he said, my God. And then, you know, it's December 2014, January 2015, Hillary's fixing to be president of the United States, and Eric Braverman can't torpedo her chances to be president, so he just goes quiet and leaves.
I don't know if he can't torpedo her chances to be president. I think Eric Braverman played a key role in torpedoing her chances to be president. I think he might well have been the leaker.
Oh, okay, good. If he was, thanks, Eric.
Yeah.
So let's show, I'm mindful of the time. I'm going to try to get us done in 2 hours, which is 15 minutes from now. So 2012 is the next page.
Sorry.
Now this is hilarious. Okay, in 2012, I cottoned onto this a while back, and I've been saving this one. You know, there's a gentleman who I'm not sure if he's still with the Clinton Health Access Initiative or not, but his name is Mustafa Leavenworth Bukhali.
I love it. It's the Lion King plus a prison.
Right, and he was the chief operating officer of CHAI, traveling around the world. Now, CHAI is headquartered in Boston. Its operations are principally, I think we need to stay on that page, sorry.
Yeah, no, people can't see that.
Okay, so, and his operations,
At that little office on Water Street or no?
they had moved to another one on Dorchester Avenue in Boston.
Right. But that's still, it's like a neighborhood. It's like a residential neighborhood.
Right, so Bukhali fails to disclose, I think, appropriately, his connections to Leapfrog Investments. He was one of the founding guys behind Leapfrog Investments. If we look at Leapfrog results, this is an investment platform that started with nothing. Okay, it's got 7 commitments to action at the bottom. All right. And if we click on this, creating 50,000 jobs and livelihoods in Africa and Asia.
Was an AIG part of the 2008 collapse?
Absolutely. So it's going to use its current $135 million for Profit with a Purpose fund. I mean, you got to love these guys. As if people, you know, make profits with no purpose. I mean, who's out there saying, I'm going to make a profit with no purpose?
Well, but it sounds like language where they're trying to make a profitable endeavor look like it fits into a charity.
Right, but again, a charity is supposed to be engaged in exclusively charitable activities. You cannot use a supposed commitment to a charity that's not necessarily funded as a means to burnish your reputation, creating an edge, making you more attractive to the dim-witted investors who've been living in this world of suppressed interest rates, who are desperate for high return, who would love to find a fund to put money into that sounds green and sustainable and profit for. You can't do that. You know, you could set such a fund up, and you could go market through traditional means, and you could try to convince people who care about making money and assessing risk and doing this stuff responsibly. But you're not supposed to dull them into a false sense of, you know, oh, isn't this green and wonderful? And by the way, if I do this, you know, maybe I'll get close to the next president of the United States, I'll get something. You can't do that. And if you are going to go down this path, you got to disclose that Mustafa Leavenworth Bukhali is simultaneously earning money as an officer of CHAI, new CHAI, connected to this Leapfrog investment, may have a residual investment in it, and also having other jobs around the world. You can't, no part of this disclosure is right. And I didn't put it up here, but back in 2006 or 7, when Leapfrog was just an idea, just getting started, Bill Clinton touted this and helped create it. at a Clinton Global Initiative meeting. He said, hey, the leapfrog guys, he's great.
Well, but the whole nature of the way the Clinton Foundation works is to lull people into that sense of green, sustainable ex-president. He's going around the world doing all this great philanthropic stuff.
It's a mutual back-scratching grifters association,
Yeah.
right? So if we go back into the slides, all right. If we hit on the linked income related party links, this gives Mr.
Oops, was that the wrong
That's
one?
it. You got it. There he is. Staff Leavenworth Bacali. Here it says President and Chief Operating Officer.
Wait a minute now. Wait a minute. The guy's named after a disease and a prison.
That's Mustafa. He calls himself. I suppose if you're. I would call myself Mustafa rather than Staff because I'm not into health, but I believe Staff is an infection.
Yes.
So if we go down a little bit here, we see he's the president and CEO of George Health Enterprises. I don't think that's George Costanza, but so he's all right.
It's the summer of George.
Yeah. Well, what was it? The Me Foundation. But he was at Clinton Health Access Initiative, May 2012 to the present, 5 years and 8 months. But he simultaneously was at Leapfrog Investments, 2007 forward.
Oh, that's convenient.
Also a director of Genocia Biosciences, whatever that is, 2008 forward.
Genocide Biosciences.
Right? And none of those are called related party relationships. If you're collecting a salary from Chai, you should be spending, in a top position, you should be spending 100% of your time on that, not swanning around the world with Leapfrog Investments. And Leapfrog Investments is trying to put investments together in the same zone where Chai is operating, in Africa and Asia. So you can't be, arriving in Mozambique and saying, hey, I'm Staff Bacali, I'm the COO of Chai, and then, let me put some money into Mozambique, and then you go down to the bar after playing whatever you play in Mozambique and hook up with a health minister and convince them to build a hospital system with your fund. And if you do any of that, banking, whatever, cross-fertilization, cross-marketing, it's got to be disclosed everywhere in the Clinton Foundation filing, the health access. You got to make full and fair disclosures. None of that.
Kind of wetting his beak in Mozambique. So if somebody is paid to be involved with the charity as a kind of a principal at a charity, it's got to be a full-time thing?
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be, but if you're a top officer, he's the chief operating officer of a company. Remember this, they're in theory.
It can't be a part-time gig.
Yeah, in theory, the Clinton Health Access Initiative was helping to fight HIV/AIDS around the world, distributing drugs.
But only on weekends.
Yeah, but distributing drugs, they didn't even check. Obviously, they didn't check. And this guy comes on board right before Ramboxi is tagged by a $500 million fine, economic settlement, in May of 2013. This is immediately in the first 12 months of the guy's watch, all right? And Rod Rosenstein's in the center of it all. Anyway, so I promise you, I only spent an hour trying to find these. Let's go back into the slides, and let's look at the next page. All right, here we are, Goldman Sachs Foundation. Now, Goldman Sachs is an enviable firm. It has done, really a very good job making money for people around the world. And it has, like all these big firms, you end up with conflicts of interest. Every big firm has problems. On balance, there are many, many fine people at Goldman. But this Goldman Sachs Foundation, let's look and see what they said if we hit that all Goldman Sachs Foundation results. This is in 2013.
What happened to Hank Paulson?
I don't know, there's 3 commitments here. Scaling success.
10,000 Women Initiative in Peru?
Yeah, I think
they're going to send the FBI over there?
Bill was on top of that one. But I think we look at supporting the growth of Brazil's women-led SMEs in 2013. Okay. Now, Itaú is a large, Itaú Unibanco S.A. is a very large business in Brazil. Right? I fail to see how this, they have this Goldman Sachs Foundation's 10,000 Women program. Harvey Weinstein was going to mentor that, but he's...
Mentor the Brazilian Women's Foundation? How do I get that job?
I'm just making that up. But this, to me, does not in any way seem to describe a truly charitable activity.
Or anything remotely legitimate.
Right, but when we go back into the slides, by 2013, Laureate had done something in 2000. You hit that. Laureate, this is what's called an S1 form. This is when you go public. There's heavy verbiage about what was happening. This happened in 2017. If we just slowly go down this first page, we see some interesting firms involved working for Laureate. DLA Piper is corporate counsel.
Those guys are always showing up.
And Simpson Thacher is another one, okay?
Do they have Perkins Coie in here?
Not yet, but good point. We keep going down a little bit. All right, this is they sold securities. And we look at the list of the people associated with this. This is in 2015. My reading of the financial statements of Laureate at this point is that they were disastrous. Okay, but the firms associated here, if you go to the right, you got Morgan Stanley, an underwriter, lead underwriter, but Goldman Sachs is an underwriter. KKR is an underwriter. KKR is also a sponsor of the original buyout. And other of these people have multiple conflicts.
David Petraeus and Eric Braverman's husband, Neil Brown.
Right, exactly. Well, these are all, when you have these big, fine firms, chances are that, accomplished people will have some connection to all these different firms. But my point here is that Goldman Sachs Foundation and the Clinton Foundation have not teased out and explained all of the intertwined relationships that occurred here in the ways that they should have explained. They haven't made a fair disclosure concerning what the Clinton Global Initiative actually did, if anything. It's never been audited properly, so no third party has ever checked it. It hasn't teased out the fact that, Goldman was centrally involved in the buyout that created Laureate Education. It then also financed it. It had, investors in it. And, somehow people decided to pay Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton's speech fees. A number of these different, Morgan Stanley did, Citigroup did, KKR did.
But didn't you say he was also paid $17 million?
$17.6 million that we know about. We don't know whether he also got reimbursed expense. I mean, just the scope, the omissions here, the material omissions relative to the size of the supposed thing, they are so material and so outrageous that it's just very clear that, the Obama administration, or whoever it was, maybe it's George Soros, told Barack Obama, look, over here, these are not the droids you're looking for.
Yeah, right.
You just don't go over there.
But
right?
they did more good than they did
than harm. I know. Yeah. And it was for the children. But if we go then to 2014, I'm flying along here because you can read this at your leisure and see what I'm talking about. We mentioned the Clinton Climate Initiative, the idea that it's never been validly organized. It's not a charity in my mind. If we go into the Clinton climate results, check that out. There's a few of them. There's so many projects. Ruby Chang boasted in the Michael Smith piece 82 commitments to action. She boasts of thousands of projects.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Quite a lot.
And, just to go, the Ted Keel Center on Environmental Solutions. I mean, you just go down this. To go through and figure out how many of these actually happened and how many of these were actually charitable and how much money was raised and who may have been harmed. If we look at this, the sun lights the way. Wow, that's an interesting one. I just noticed for the first time above that.
Virgin's bill. That's perfect for the president.
Right, yeah. And his wife. A commitment by NRG Energy to do something with the Solar Electric Light Fund. In some Haitian...
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean... it's just on the surface level, it's like, why is this charitable? And why was this commitment to action done outside of the Clinton Bush Haiti Fund, if it made sense? How did they decide, you had the Clinton Haiti Fund in this time frame, you had the Clinton Bush Haiti Fund, you have this thing, the Solar Electric Light Fund, which I think the Clinton Foundation may have made some association with. I'll have to check that, actually. There's no keeping any of this straight, which is what the essential thing you have to do here. If you're a trustee, you're sitting here saying, look, all right, around a table, the first thing you do in an organizational meeting is you ask yourself, what's happening? And what are we doing?
Did they build solar stuff in Haiti?
I mean, the sun shines in Haiti when it's not raining. I mean, I don't know.
Creates light.
So let's go back into the slide quickly. And then let's look at Akzo Nobel.
I like how they spell Akzo.
Right. Now this is, what they did? Akzo Nobel will create an urban resilience guide that outlines how the right colors and chemicals could create a sense of community and identity as well as preserve city heritage. Now, how do I read that, being the fundamental cynic that I am? Akzo Nobel will develop a program to sell Akzo Nobel paint in cities around the world. I mean, that's what this is.
Is it a paint company?
Well, they make paint. Chemicals that go into paint. I mean, yeah, expertise in colors and coatings, paint. So they paint public spaces. Yeah. In what way? I mean, it sounds wonderful. If we go back to Sunday's presentation where we talked about Tom Sawyer and the fence.
Yeah.
This is literally painting the fences.
Yeah.
And saying that it's charity. And Nobel, of course, is I believe the entity, the man who created the original Nobel piece of Akzo Nobel is, of course, the Nobel
they're
Peace Prize.
recommending people for the Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah, we could invent dynamite and feel guilty about it and give people awards for peace because, peace comes through dynamite.
For Barack Obama, it did.
He deserved every shekel. So if we go back into the slides, and we could do that Rockefeller Foundation. I mean, you got to harsh on them. 74 commitments to action by that august group.
The heart transplant.
Look at the Africa Partnership Fund. If you hit, yeah.
I really can't imagine that the Rockefeller Foundation cares about Africa. J.P. Morgan Chase.
So Pearl Capital Partners will invest $25 million in small and medium agricultural enterprises throughout East Africa. And you're working with, this is really funny. We got to look into what the Gatsby Charitable Foundation is. I've never heard of that one before. I've heard of J.P. Morgan. I think that's a pretty big bank.
That seems like a joke.
But the Gatsby Charitable Foundation, we will have to check that one out. Maybe crowdsourcers, let's figure out what the Gatsby Charitable Foundation is. But this is basically a commitment to create an investment fund.
But that's the thing. When they use words like invest, that's the opposite of charity. They're getting money back from him. Yeah. You invest in something because you want it to be profitable and you're going to get money from it, correct?
In the private sector. I think in the public sector, when you invest in something, that is charity.
Is it?
The problem is it's charity to the politician.
I see.
Anyway, so you see what I mean about the number of projects. Now let's go to 2015. Now CGI University, this is rich. This is a rich vein. Let's look at the commitments. Just click on that. How many do you think they've made to Clinton Global Initiative? 245 commitments to entity that did not exist. Clinton Global Initiative University was never formed lawfully anywhere in the world. It is a joint venture between a fraudulent charity and a financially vulnerable public company. None of the filings have ever, but they say here they made 245 commitments.
This seems crazy.
And look at this one. Yeah.
3D printing is freedom for human. What is that even about?
Well, how about this one, though? DLA Piper LLP, New Perimeter. That's the first time I've looked at this. What does this tell us? Let's see what you hit read more, yeah. New Perimeter. This is a nonprofit organization established by DLA Piper. Skills-based legal training to 800 students in East Africa. Well, how are they going to do that?
I don't know.
And why does this have anything to do with the Clinton Global Initiative?
Doesn't it?
And how come none of this is disclosed? DLA Piper is the firm that supposedly did an independent review in 2015 of whether the Clinton Foundation's filings were lawfully filed. Yet they're engaged. They're a contributor to the Clinton. I mean, how do you?
Yeah, it
how do
seems
you
like
navigate
a conflict of
little
interest.
bit?
Yeah. And also, doesn't Peter Comey work for DLA Piper?
Yeah. But I'd say the bigger conflict is that DLA Piper was the in-house corporate counsel for Laureate, and also was working for the Clinton Foundation. I mean, it's just insurmountable, unnavigable conflicts here, right? And go back into the body. Let's jump ahead to 2016, because I failed in keeping it under 2 hours. Now, this is a rich one. I mean, this is really hilarious. Starkey Company is a hearing aid company, and there are not many hearing aid companies. And I know from personal, I don't wear a hearing aid, but I have friends who do. And, you know, they're very expensive. They're surprisingly expensive. This phone over here, you know, is very powerful as a camera, a video camera, whatever. And it costs far less than a hearing aid. And it's not like nobody needs a hearing aid.
Scale of manufacturing, I think.
But still, it's not like you can't gain. I mean, there are millions of people sadly need, tens of millions of people.
So why are they so expensive?
Because it's an oligopoly, and Starkey is a private company, and it sits on top of this oligopoly, and they have this idea that it would be really great fun to
rip off dead people.
not dead people, deaf people. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
sorry.
it sounds great. I mean, it really is one of these things. It's like the Mike Lindell, you know, My Pillow Company.
Oh, yeah.
And it's from Minnesota as well. What is wrong with Minnesota? But and I guess that's where Peter Smith checked out. But
Yeah.
the Starkey Hearing Aid Company has a program where it takes used hearing aids
That's kind of gross.
and reconditions them, and then it gets doctors, you know, ear doctors, whatever they're called, to agree to take used hearing aids with them on trips around the world to poor countries, and have these ceremonies where deaf kids hear for the first time. Okay, and doesn't that sound wonderful? I mean, the look on the kid's face when they hear for the first time is, yeah, I'm sure it's nice. There's a massive set of problems with this whole enterprise, starting with, hit the second link, ongoing fraud at Starkey. Now, these are people at the Justice Department who were not too busy to work, okay? And this Starkey Laboratories is the Starkey Hearing Aid Company, okay? And this is something that went out September 21st, 2016. Read this at your leisure. This is just measures what was going on then.
$20 million theft.
Well, it's worse than that. There's a suspicion it's far worse than that. This is a big saga. There are many, many stories. I just wanted to wet people's beaks, so to speak, understanding what Starkey is. There's problems at Starkey. If we go back into the slides.
Just quickly, someone in the comments is saying this is not funny. I think that you and I are making comic relief here because it's not funny.
Right,
it's
of course.
staggering. This
Right,
is just
yeah.
like the craziest thing ever.
Exactly. Then we look at that thing, strange case gets truly weird.
Starkey saga gets stranger with claims of tax fraud and talking deer.
Yeah.
What is that about?
Well, there you have it.
How could they have a claim of talking deer?
Well, you read the story. It's just, I mean...
Defense attorneys representing indicted former Starkey Hearing Technologies president seeking documents and recordings to back up claims the company owner engaged in odd behavior and tax fraud. Does he have recordings of talking
They said
deer?
Ruzicka alleges that Austin, the owner, said a dead deer spoke to him. In another meeting, Austin said he received business advice from angels. I mean, you know, so there's a real... The
He's
truth
crazy.
is, the truth is with Starkey, it's a private company, very much into fundraising for Democrat causes. Also, Bill wears, I think, a Starkey hearing aid. Bush W. wears a Starkey hearing aid. And if you go back into the slides, you got something that is as well organized as the Clinton Global Initiative. You want to give out an annual award,
Yeah.
right? So you want a Clinton Global Initiative. Not that one, I don't think.
Oh.
But if we go back to the...
Not this?
Yeah, that one. Is that the False Front Awards?
Well, he's got a hearing aid.
Well, maybe if we go back into the... Well, I don't have it out here, but the Starkey company makes a donation to the Clinton Global Initiative so that the Clinton Global Initiative can hand out Clinton Global Initiative Citizen of the Year awards. The money comes from Starkey.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, it's just, you're right. Whoever said this isn't funny, it isn't funny. But if I were to sit here and start pounding the table and pounding the table and, you know, getting more and more agitated,
First of all, furniture would be destroyed.
right. And, you know, you have to just look at this and say, there is no way that the IRS and the Department of Justice can defend, and the 50 states Attorney General can defend, letting this thing continue to fester and escalate the way they have done. They need to pull the plug on this. They need to shut her down, get her done, Larry the Cable Guy it. And, you know, in the next page, next slide.
Because it's certainly not an oversight. There's like 1,000 examples.
So on this one, if you hit the first link, the foreign policy link, earlier this year, after the Clinton Global Initiative shut down, this guy who was actually a very good writer, Joe Conason, won the Charles Ortel Monty Python Dead Parrot Award, because actually the Clinton Global Initiative is truly dead.
No, it isn't. It's sleeping.
It's resting.
It's resting, right?
No, it is actually dead. Because, among other things, the Clinton Global Initiative has at all times been controlled by the Clinton Foundation. And from November 2nd, 2013 forward, the Clinton Foundation became illegally controlled by the Clinton family, something you can't do. So it's definitely dead. And it's just a question of how long is it going to take you guys in the Justice Department and the IRS to shut this baby down and get our money back?
Weekend at Hillary's, they're just like walking around.
Right, exactly. Right. If we go back in there, so yeah, this Trump dossier scandal, if we hit,
This?
yeah. This is something, October 23rd, 2003, we've had it up in the past. The firm, one of the firms involved, the law firm involved with this Trump dossier was Baker Hostetler. On October 23rd, 2000, and it's a big firm.
Haven't heard that before related to the dossier.
Yeah, and if you go down at the very bottom here, it says that Baker Hostetler was involved creating this release and organizing all this stuff. Where is it? There you go. Magaziners, the chairman of this thing that doesn't exist. And it says somewhere in this release that Baker Hostetler was involved helping to draft it.
There it is.
Yeah, law firm of Baker Hostetler provided free legal services in conjunction with the agreements announced today. Well, you know, their work is highly suspect. I mean, you know, in October of 2003, there was no Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS initiative anywhere in the world that was lawfully organized. The Clinton Foundation couldn't control it. Ira Magaziner wasn't an officer, director, or trustee of the Clinton Foundation. None of the agreements that had been struck were lawful anywhere in the world. And somehow the Columbia University Mailman School gets dragged into this. Harvard AIDS Institute, which I'm not even sure actually existed legally.
There was
Harvard
also
Medical
some
School.
fake Harvard thing related to Ira Magazine
Right,
at that address.
Yeah, 225 Water Street.
There was no Harvard office at that address.
Right, exactly. And you just look at this thing and you say, you know, here's Baker Hostetler taking credit for participating in a fraud. You know, generally, I wouldn't do that if I were trying to get more fraud business. I mean,
think
more
a
real
lot
business.
of their tactic relies on hiding in plain sight, though, because they figure, well, if you announce this, no one's going to think you'd be stupid enough to announce what you're actually doing. Like, you wouldn't put on your LinkedIn page, hey, I'm, you know, doing something I shouldn't be doing.
Right, yeah.
So by doing that, maybe people say, oh, we couldn't possibly be doing that.
Right, and you know, the thing here, 2003 is a very important year because in the Clinton Foundation filings, investigators need to listen up here. That's the only year where detail on contributions is lacking, is missing. The Schedule B disclosures are missing.
2003?
2003. That is a year in which magically there are no salaries paid to employees in providing program services, where the biggest expenditure in program services is for, quote, special projects without explanation. And I mean, it's just a complete horrible situation. The audit's a joke.
I wonder how much Chris Gowan's Diet Coke budget was.
Probably $16. But if we look at the Wired story, the third link, all right, this was something that came out last year, I think. Yeah, September of 2016, that basically touted the Clinton Global Initiative because it has data to prove its worth.
That's crazy.
And a Wired magazine is not exactly supposed to be
Financial geniuses?
No, it's supposed to be. These are supposed to be high-tech people who get value and I don't know who Issy Lepowski is, but whoever, I don't know if it's a man or a woman, but I can tell you one thing: this person doesn't know jack, what about charity filings, because the Clinton Global Initiative certainly by that time had failed to prove that it had done more good than harm. It's a disaster.
The very definition of the word data doesn't inherently imply you can have data that's totally incorrect
Yeah.
or fraudulent.
Yeah, but in this case, I mean, this person needs to go into a different profession, because whoever it is completely misled. September 20th, 2016 was final moments of the campaign.
Right. Quick question though, Trump Foundation, what do they do? What's up with them? Is it fraudulent?
Well, the Trump Foundation is shut down because they operated this university, Trump University.
And part of the deal was shut it down.
Well, I don't know if part of the deal was, but they've decided to shut it down.
Like, people were upset that Trump had apparently purchased a painting with money from the foundation. To have any of them seen a single episode of Sunday with Charles?
I don't think so. Look, I don't, if there was illegal activity, both in, false and materially misleading filings of the Trump Foundation, they paid a penalty of $25 million cash, right? And they're shutting it down. And they've entered into a legal agreement, so maybe all that stuff is behind them. The scale of what happened there is bigger by far than Corinne Brown, but a pittance compared to what the Clintons have done over time. And I've said all along from the beginning, I focus on big frauds. I mean, I want to focus on those, get them exposed, try to get them investigated, prosecuted, people convicted, restitution, etc. But that's not to say that I like small frauds. I dislike small frauds too. And, I think there are problems. There were problems with the Trump Foundation, but there are, Clinton's over here and Trump's over there. Trump gets landed on in the middle of the election in 2016.
And he fixed it pretty quickly.
Well, but Eric Schneiderman's too busy. I mean, I don't know, maybe he's out with, the FBI agents and IRS agents and the SEC having fun. But go back into the slides here, yeah. This is really a crucial one today, and it happened overnight, actually. If we look at that Freedom Watch lawsuit, this is something we won't even try to get.
Larry Klayman.
Yeah. This alleges all kinds of fraud involving the Clinton Foundation, basically using the Clinton Foundation as an influence peddling conduit. And it was thrown out by a Clinton-supported judge, Clinton-nominated judge. So it didn't ever see the light of day. But now that we're learning more about the Clinton Foundation, we're learning more about the caliber of the previous investigations. This isn't a laughing matter. Whoever pointed that out, congratulations, you're exactly right. It's time for people, in particular our attorneys general, who have records of what happened in their state, who can access the federal filings, and it's time for the foreign government authorities to really look through this carefully. And it's time for Donald Trump's people in the IRS and the FTC, shut this baby down, preserve the records, preserve the bank accounts, appoint a conservator, find out what really happened here, force the people who've been associated with this to place assets in trust, readying them to narrow our deficit. You go after all the people who benefited from this, who thought they were buying the services of the President of the United States from January 20th, 2017 forward, and her appointees and Hillary Clinton. All those people can help us close the deficit and pay down the debt. So if we go, give you a sense of the scale of this, so go to the next page.
Maybe we get Larry Klayman on as a guest.
I'm sure. So this is the most recent thing that I was able to find, laying out the assets, and those are in billions, by the way. The assets of publicly reporting charities, okay? 73% of the assets of all publicly reporting charities, those would be the bigger ones, accounted for $2.35 trillion, okay? And another thing that's interesting about that side, only 31% of the organizations held 73% of the assets. So in the not-for-profit world, there's not an equal distribution, right? Assets get concentrated. as wealth gets concentrated. It's a very interesting statistic, actually. I put in red international foreign affairs concentrated foundations. That's only 39 billion, okay? So that's not, and that makes sense. You know, you shouldn't be getting a tax deduction in the U.S. For providing benefits internationally. I mean, it just doesn't make all that much sense. So it is unusual that this Clinton Foundation would go from being a Little Rock-based presidential archive and research center, and because that wasn't all that sexy, then say, hey, I got a better idea. We're going to go to 160 countries around the world and throw money at problems, and nobody's going to check anything. It is anomalous. And the attorneys general need to be asking, how did that migration happen? What were you told in each state about what they were doing?
Well, who was the mastermind? Like, somebody at some point had to be like, you know, Bill, I got an idea. What if we...
I think it's Ira Magaziner. Ira Magaziner is this, consultant. He's an investor. He's very good with the internet. He's the internet czar under President Clinton. He has a mind, perhaps, that works like this. So wouldn't shock me if it was Ira Magaziner. Now, if you want to make an issue of this, if we go to the next slide, you want to help us get this some attention. What I have done here is I went up and I figured out the Twitter contact points, and where it says none, obviously there isn't one, but we have them for most of the states. In every case, if you want to contact your Attorney General, you just put the @ sign in front of whatever's shown there for the state, and you can send them a copy of this presentation. I would like you to send a copy of every one of our presentations individually. Just take the time, just get up there, start tweeting them out. And every time you tweet it out, put CS the truth. And it'll get retweeted. Tweet it to me.
And Charles Ortel, yeah.
Yeah, and Jason.
So we want to make sure people have those Twitter handles.
Mine is really tough to remember.
It's just @ Charles Ortel.
Yeah.
And @ CS the truth, also pretty easy to remember.
I think that finishes up.
Wow, well, there you go. It's always an incredible amount of staggering criminal revelations when you come over here, Charles, and start just giving us this information. It's not a laughing matter, but it's like when you get to a certain point, all you can do is laugh. Somebody's got to do something here, and I hope that's happening. We're hearing about all this FBI activity that was happening earlier in DC. There was a story here on True Pundit talking about that. And, True Pundit was experiencing what appeared to be a DDoS attack earlier today. The server was just super, super overloaded. So maybe that's because it's incredibly popular, or maybe it's because it seems like when independent news organizations are getting close to the truth, people like to attack them. I don't know if you realize this, Charles, but Indiegogo has a campaign for True Pundit. They're trying to crowdfund some money so that they don't have to rely on advertisers or major corporate sponsors or owners. And people should consider, if they like True Pundit as much as you and I, they should consider going there to Indiegogo and supporting that as a resource. And the same thing with Crowdsource the Truth. By not having a corporate sponsor or being owned by someone that is making huge multi-million-dollar donations to the Clinton Foundation and having an impact on what gets prosecuted and what doesn't, and what gets reported in the news and what doesn't, we're able to give everybody this agenda-free, news resource that is not advertiser-driven. It's funded by the individual sponsors in the crowd, so people can go to paypal.me, crowdsource the truth, or patreon.com, crowdsource the truth, and become a monthly sponsor. I really want to thank everyone who's been sponsoring Crowdsource the Truth, even for a super low amount. I almost like it better when people sponsor for a low amount, because I don't want anybody to be financially burdened to support Crowdsource the Truth, to sponsor Crowdsource the Truth. But what we want to do is we want to expand the audience by giving everyone factual, true information that is backed up by evidence, like financial reports, like firsthand testimony, like photographic evidence, video evidence, real hard evidence that supports what we say, so people know they can come here and get the truth. And certainly, if anyone in the audience has any information about material that you present or that I present that can augment what we're saying, or if we've said something that is incorrect, that's the other aspect of Crowdsource the Truth, is it's an interactive
Right.
news source where people can tweet at you or email you, and they can go to charlesortel.com and learn more about you and the research that you're doing. And it really, I can't thank you enough, Charles, for coming here every week and sharing this incredibly important information with everyone, because I think we've all seen what happens when we leave this kind of reporting to news agencies that are more focused on making jokes about Matt Lauer's penis or whatever it is they were doing at the that roast, and lying about what's actually going on and hiding the incredible crimes for 3 decades. Here, we're talking about the Clintons, we're talking about the Awan brothers, we're talking about wrongdoing in the FBI. So it's really important that people support what's going on and follow your research, tweet it at their representatives, tweet it at the attorney generals, and an attorney general who is not responding to this sort of stuff, I mean, they need to be the next people that are examined. Why are they not? This is blatant and obvious, flagrant criminality.
Well, thank you, Jason, for giving me this chance to go through all this. Again, for those of you who are not as comfortable with accounting and legal stuff, we tried to keep it light today, actually, so that it'd be easier for you to access it. Print the slides out, follow the links. You'll see what I'm talking about in some depth. Go back and watch some of the earlier shows, those of you who are newcomers. Read this memo here that was from last year. For those of you who are more technically oriented, this lays out a whole bunch of the problems. And thanks so much for your interest and support. Thank you, Jason, for giving me this chance.
Hey, it's my pleasure, Charles. I love having you over. And I sometimes, I've got so much going on that I sometimes forget, but I do include links to your presentations in the video description box on YouTube. There'll be a link.
Great.
And if there's ever a video where that's not present, people can just email me, truth@crowdsourcethetruth.org, and let me know, hey, I need the slides for this or that particular video. And if they mention the title, like today was Bonnie and Clyde, I'll make sure to have that in there. And people can also email me for a private Bitcoin payment link if people want to sponsor Crowdsource the Truth with cryptocurrency. Bitcoin has been performing explosively. It was over 13,000 US dollars for one Bitcoin earlier today. And right now, as we speak, the phone's on LTE, so it's going a little bit slowly. Charles, it's $13,974 for one Bitcoin.
Wow.
It just seems staggering how much and how rapidly Bitcoin is rising. I know you've said it's a bubble. I mean, a bubble's a bubble. We've heard a lot of reporting lately, and I was having a conversation with King James about some news sources that were reporting, particularly in the United Kingdom, they're looking at regulating Bitcoin. And of course, Bitcoin's whole thing is that it's decentralized, it's not regulated. I see some problems with it not being regulated. It presents a lot of opportunities for theft, for not paying taxes. And I mean, I'm all for keeping as much money as we earn, but I don't know if the government or the society that we have established can be sustainable if everyone's earning and spending money that is untaxed. So we'll have to see what happens there.
Well,
13,000. Oh, it's $14,066 right now. So I guess the people that are acting out on the internet are right. I'm having a huge impact on the price of Bitcoin. I mention it and it goes up.
Well, but I think you like Seinfeld as well. I'm a huge Seinfeld proponent, and I loved. I don't know if you remember the episode where Jerry Seinfeld had some stock options.
I don't know what happened.
I mean, the same exactly. Up, they went up, and I need more. Or oh, well, hold on, and then crashed and up. And so I mean, the real. What I would say is the technical term. It's not all that technical. Is price discovery. The price discovery mechanism for Bitcoin, let's just say, is opaque.
What does that mean?
Like the bargaining, the negotiating of how you arrive at that price. Is that really the price? Who's checking to make sure? Is that one Bitcoin selling at that price? Is that thousands, millions of Bitcoin selling at that price? What sort of commissions are being charged?
It's up $2,252 just in the past day. That's a 19% increase.
Right.
It's staggering. It's staggering. Right. This is Coinbase that I'm looking at, and that's another area that I was thinking about. So people have, generous sponsors of Crowdsource the Truth have provided, fractional Bitcoin payments, and I needed to pay for this computer and various other things that we do to keep Crowdsource the Truth running. I need food. It costs money to live in this apartment everywhere you go around New York City and traveling and all that. And I did, cash out a Bitcoin, and when I took it out of Coinbase, it took 3 hours from the time I said, give me US dollars for it, to the time it said the transaction is complete. And I don't know anything about finance, Charles, but it seemed to me there's a lot of leeway in there for the people running Coinbase to be able to monkey around with the value and how much I'm getting versus you say, what is the fee to sell it? Well, right now, just in sitting here and tapping on the thing, it's $14,039. It's going up. So why isn't it like minutes or instant or who knows?
I don't know. It's just, I think I'm no expert on cryptocurrencies, but the fact that you've seen this massive run up in less than a year in the price of all these cryptocurrencies should tell you that a large percentage or a large number of people are increasingly more and more nervous about the better known storehouses of value, be it the banks, securities firms, commodities, et cetera. People are nervous that the system is now under great strain. And I think also there's an element of demand by people laundering dirty money or flight capital. So it's just when you see this type of behavior and no one's standing up and saying, this is precisely how it works, this is precisely how it's regulated, this is what, these are the rules of the game, this is why it's a level playing field, and nobody's really on top of it, you have to understand it is a bubble. And you can make money, as they did in Holland with tulips, you can make money for a while until you lose all your money. And so the first thing I would say, just when I see this, please don't borrow money. And I'm not giving financial advice, but please don't borrow money to buy a Bitcoin. That's really dangerous stuff. And when you invest, you should be investing money that you can afford to lose 100% of it. That's what when you invest, you're going to lose money and you're going to make money. On balance, you hope you make money. But you are going to lose money from time to time. And so you should be playing with money that you really need to pay your rent or expenses, et cetera.
All right, exactly. And as I said, we've gotten over the past several months a lot of news from Mr. Hudson and the various members of the Hudson Group that I am in touch with while he's not broadcasting with us. And they've been telling us that there's a lot of money in Venezuela that's looking for a way out of the country. And Bitcoin is new and cryptocurrency is new. So perhaps it's redefining certain aspects of, again, I'm certainly not a cryptocurrency expert or an investment, even novice, but I tell you, it's real interesting to see, Charles. We'll have to see what happens here with Bitcoin. 14,031. I hope some of our Bitcoin millionaires will slice off a fractional chunk and sponsor the channel. Charles, thank you for joining me tonight. I will see you on Sunday, where you will undoubtedly unload another Moab of financial crime information on the audience and basically let the Clintons know what they've been doing and tell everybody what happened.
We will indeed.
All right. See you soon. Thanks, everybody.